sorry I'm slightly late. I was busy just telling my mom about the Criminal Minds episode I saw. So, let me see how things sound. I'll adjust how the camera looks in a bit. Like the gamma or whatever. Like it looks adorable when it's like this, but anyway, okay, that looks good. So yeah. Looks like we sound good. So yeah, guys, how is everyone doing? So today, in today's stream, we are not going to be playing any games. In fact, we're going to be reacting to a bunch of Luxin videos. I don't know how much we'll get through. I have a feeling we might get through these 3. Maybe we can squeeze in all of them, though. I'm not sure. But how I do these reaction videos, especially with Luxin, because he does a lot of lore videos on Xenoblade, what I like to do is watch them, obviously, react to them, but also discuss the points he makes, talk about what he talks about, and this will actually be a good opportunity for me to bring up more stuff about the Xenoblade 3 art book, because I haven't gotten the chance to cover it in a video, because I still don't have a full translation of it. I do know the basic points, but it will give me stuff to talk about for the stream. So yeah, let's just get right into the stuff. Also, link in the description for his YouTube channel. I may put his this is for the YouTube side. On Twitch, there's also a description which I'm going to add when in the stream highlight or whatever that I turn out streams to. I will put I will put the link there, but I don't know if anyone actually sees the description. I don't even know how you see it. But at least on the YouTube side, link to his YouTube channel will be below. And I may add the videos themselves, but I just don't know what videos I'm going to react to. I'm thinking maybe 3, but maybe all of them. So I didn't want to put videos that if I put these 2, I didn't want to put them on in the description, in case I didn't react to them. So anyway, let's go to the truth.
Thank you once again to everyone.
The truth about, the truth about Lucky 7 and more lore drops.
You see on screen now for helping make this all possible. I promise I was going to get a week early video done this weekend because the art book would come out on Monday, and then we started getting artwork stuff on Friday, so this stuff is time sensitive and is unfortunately going to have to be out when it's out.
Yeah.
That being said,
I kind of wish
video I was planning on making is still in the pipeline.
I kind of wish I covered this stuff when it came
whenever
out.
I'm able to get to it, and I'm not just making constant stuff about this one.
Well, lots of you wanted me to wait.
For everyone else, this video will contain spoilers for the entire numbered Xenoblade Chronicles trilogy. You're seeing this video the day the art book officially comes out, but for a few days now, there have been several pages that have already been posted online, some of which have proper translations.
Yeah.
And who could have possibly guessed? They keep saying that I was right about almost everything. As of recording this, the only pages that have fully been posted online are 430 through 447. Despite Ionio's Moments being an art book, these pages consist of almost no actual art, and are purely the developer and artist interviews that were advertised, including responses to the fan survey. While the book does also contain a printing of all of the campsite dialogue from the main game and affinity scenes from Future Redeemed, a preview page showed that starts on page 404, which means there are 400 pages of art, commentary on that art, and potentially other story and lore clarifications and tidbits, like were in the previous game's art books, that we know nothing about, and are only going to start learning about the day this video goes out.
Which we still haven't seen much.
As far as I
At least I haven't.
Barring a very small amount of early shipments, the only places people have gotten there so far are Japanese physical retailers breaking street games.
So,
while only
I don't think there's
4%
any
of the
full
book has been put
translation
online
out
so
yet.
far, the part we have is the developer interview. So a lot of the interesting lore details are going to be in there. I have read through the entire thing with machine translation, and there is a lot of stuff, but it's machine translation.
Yeah.
It is going to get a lot of things wrong.
It's
and
not
the
reliable.
scans are not in good enough quality for something like Google Lens to even accurately pick up all the text in the first place. So there's no point to making a video yet. That too is wrong though, as Lugal Banda, the fan translator who's been responsible for a lot of important projects for the fan community in the West, namely translating the Siren model kit, as well as
Is that the guy I follow on Twitter? I actually don't know.
And pointing out a few very vital mistranslations in Xenoblade 2 and 3, has already done a broad strokes bullet point translation of several important parts of these 18 pages.
Which I have looked at.
Both the scans that have been
I was
used
thinking of
and
covering
Lugal
it,
Banda's
but
blog post will be linked in the description of the video, and I will only be going over the stuff Lugal Banda has properly translated. There is no point in discussing anything that has not had a human translated into English yet. And I do know that a very large group of fan translators associated with the Files from the Zohar Twitter account is working on something for the entire book. So this is just a taste of things to come, though it does probably contain the most vital information.
Which again makes me think I should have covered it, but
machine translation, but I will be sure to point it out every single time that happens as an indicator that you should not take anything I say about that stuff as a fact. Before I get started, I do have one last thing to say here, and that is, don't get excited for a huge amount of major lore reveals. Most of the untranslated stuff is pretty interesting. It's about the developers' process on working through the games, their philosophies, stuff they put in it, inspirations, and that kind of thing. But the lore stuff is largely confirmation of things I've been saying for almost 2 years now. So you're not going to get blown away by a lot of things here. Most of the quote-unquote
but it's just good to
lore
have
stuff are just
confirmation,
official confirmations of very obvious subtext that anyone paying attention should have noticed the first time through the game. And since I had a lot of people yelling at me whenever I talked about this kind of thing, basically since the game came out, the video is going to be more of an I told you so and consolidation of various topics I've mentioned since Xenoblade 3 came out than anything. Though the artist part of the interview is basically untranslated, I would like to talk about it just because there are some new pieces of art, and I would like to discuss a
which
little
I
bit of
haven't
art
seen a lot of,
on
but I saw
art.
one I think
At the bottom
Luxin
of
will
page
talk about.
434, we have concept art of Melia. On the left is an early version of her outfit, this one with a completely different color palette, a lot of different pieces, no leggings, and more wings on her shoulders, as well as much more pronounced rainbow colors in the Telethia wings.
It looks a lot like a maid outfit,
Those
not gonna
rainbow
lie.
wings are present in her official art in the final game, but they don't really appear that much in the game itself, much more just plain looking gold. So I do think we kind of missed out on that. The middle image is much closer to her final outfit, though this one takes a lot more color inspiration from her base game Xenoblade 1 outfit as opposed to her future connected one. She does have a headpiece she doesn't have in the final game, but as far as the actual outfit goes, that is largely the same. On the right, we just have a version of Noah in the Royal Summoner outfit, but with that old color palette as opposed to the final one. At the bottom of the next page are some early versions of Mio, and these are very interesting because they obviously predate any of the concept art from the special edition art book, but I can very, very confidently say the image on the right with the braid is the earliest one, the one in the middle with the longer, fluffier hair is an intermediate one, and the final one where she has virtually her final hairstyle but still a very different outfit is the most
looks slightly longer.
And the last one before they started going down the direction of the outfit she has in the game.
Like, hold on, wait, let's discuss this real quick. Let's discuss this. The one in the far right looks a lot like, actually, like Pyra or Mithra. Kind of reminds me, even the middle one kind of gives me vibes of it. So it kind of makes me think, which was theorized that Mio might have been, you know, she was theorized that maybe she would have been part of like an Aegis core. Like she had the Aegis thing on her neck before it was changed to the Nia one. So, like, I think you could definitely tell the resemblance with, like, Pyra Mithra in these two images. Which I'm kind of glad they went with Nia, making her, you know, basically be Nia's daughter rather than be, like, a Pyra Mithra daughter mixed with, I guess, Nia. So.
Say this because while we don't have early versions of the concept art for the main cast, there are pieces of environmental concept art in the special edition art book that released with the game itself.
Yeah.
And one of these pieces is this one, featuring a giant Ferranis and 6 characters in front of it.
Which that one kind of looks
People
like...
made up that these were the founders, which was never...
It does kind of look like the founders, but it's not. In fact, the one with the spear-looking thing looks a lot like. I think that's what Luxin is going to talk about. Looks a lot like the the Mio's concept. So, yeah.
For true, this was early concept for the final party, and you can still very clearly match each of these characters to one of the characters in the final party of 6. But besides Uni and kind of Senna, there are a lot of design iterations that they had to go through to get to these characters. The obvious thing, though, is the girl in the center with the spear is very clearly the same design as this early Neo concept,
which a lot kind of looks like a
Xenogears looking outfit. I guess this means that not only was Mio's race changed from humanoid to Gormati during development, but even her weapon type was as well.
See, it looks a lot like
how polearms are usually depicted in JRPGs. She was probably always supposed to be a fast, agile dodge tank.
Why can I not remember? Oh my god! Why can I not remember her name? Jesus Christ! How can I forget a name that's just a letter?
It was also not always going to be Mia's kid, because not only was she not Gormati from the beginning, but none of these 3 pieces show her with a core crystal. So that might have been a later development when they were figuring out exactly how they wanted to work previous characters into the game. Without having access to the actual concept pages for Mio herself, which are going to be way, way earlier in the book, I can't confirm for sure, but it's probably likely that there will be more iterations of these early designs back there, as well as incarnations of the other 5 main characters that resemble the ones in the piece of art from the original Special Edition book. Next, on page 437, this is a section where the artists are talking about various non-main characters, so supporting characters and heroes and stuff, and they mention 3 people throughout it, which are Dirk, Kalaravi, and Yorin, and as such, there are pieces of concept art for all 3 of them. On the left is an even more unhinged version of Dirk.
I know,
no
look at him.
core crystal, snake tongue, not a skin color that would make sense for Rex or Mithra, might actually be Indoline. Outfit does not have any Agni or any Mithril looking color scheme on it whatsoever, so there's soft confirmation for that. You're welcome. I'm kind of glad we got the final design, though. This is very cursed looking. In the middle is Kalaravi. Now, this is fairly close to his final design, besides the armor. His face looks relatively similar,
does it?
just a bit younger, maybe. And here we can see that he has a Flesh Eater core crystal with a very unique shape. It's not quite Bridget's shape, so I don't think he was ever supposed to be connected to Bridget. He seems to just be some new Agnian guy, not related to any previous character, and barring him having other concept art earlier in the book, I think his face here and just general body type are close enough to his final design where I can be confident in headcanoning that the core crystal he has here is the core crystal he has underneath his armor in his final design as well. Then we have Yorin, and oh my god,
he's
I
skinny.
thought Dirk was cursed. For some reason, scrawny femboy Yorin is so much worse than even that.
Oh my
I'm
god.
so glad we got the design we got in the final game.
Yeah.
It's the exact same head on a completely different body. And I'm pretty sure if you take this picture of Yorin and go to the concept art of him,
He
in the
really
other
looks
art
like a
book,
femboy.
it
not
is the
gonna
exact
lie.
same head copy pasted onto a differently drawn body. So like, yeah, they made a body later on that much better fit the head and face.
Which
as
I
well as the
like.
actual character.
I like
So,
chubby representation
Kalaravi,
in my
you know,
video
kind of
games.
mixed on. His armor is a lot more unique and cool than it is in the final game, but this might have been before they decided to homogenize the Kavesi and Agni aesthetics a little bit. The other 2 are definitely good changes. Lastly, on 439, we can see what is probably an early version of the party in something resembling their final designs, as Mio is here depicted
Close
in her
enough.
first Gormati incarnation from the earlier page, alongside early versions of the other 5 party members. These versions of the characters are obviously recognizable as the characters
Look at
they are in
Tion's
the game,
hair.
which is another reason why I have to say this version of Mio is later than the other 2 on the previous page. Now, it looks like this art predates the decision to make the Agnian color aesthetic primarily white. All the Kavesi are wearing primarily black, but it looks like most characters' colors hadn't been fully decided upon yet.
Yeah.
Noah is wearing some red, but Senna has more red on her.
Oh,
Yumi
yeah.
has 0 green on her whatsoever, and just has a pink belt or sash or something.
Which is not fitting.
And Lens is using a different blue than he has in the final game. However,
Is that a darker blue?
it seems like as soon as they decided to make him a Machina, his final design more or less popped out, as this Lens is almost identical to the earliest looking version of Lens in the Special Edition art book. And it seems like that version there was just taken by refining this specific piece of art, as in that one, He's a bit more detailed, his pants are camo, and his boots have a bit more refined structure to it than just being a few lines in this piece. Yumi's outfit completely changes.
Yeah.
The leather jacket does look kind of cool. I would love to see Yumi in a proper leather jacket, but the hoodie, again, fits more with the aesthetic they wanted to go with. Noah, his outfit resembles Morag more than anything, so I definitely know why they changed that. But just all of this in general does not make sense with what
Would
they
have been
decided
kind of
to
cool, not gonna lie, to have these be part of the DLC or like unlockable costumes, you know? Like, it would have been kind of cool.
make everyone's clothes look like in the final game anyway. So it seems like they finalized on the appearance of the main characters before they figured out the kind of outfits everyone in the world would be wearing, and then tweaked their outfits based on that, except for Lens again. I don't really know what to say about Danganronpa character Taion here. I think the pants are the most cursed, actually. Like, all things considered. Most people seem to be agreeing that every change in his design in between now and the actual game that released was a good one. So I'm just going to co-sign to that and talk about Senna. With the notable exception of Taion, her hairstyle is probably the most different in this arc compared to the final game, because she has Bridget's hair buns here, or at least a smaller version.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Perhaps she was originally intended to be connected to Bridget explicitly, but when they decided to make Mio Nia's daughter, they moved a little bit away from that with Senna, because they probably only wanted one of the main cast to very obviously be a descendant from someone from one of the previous two games for thematic reasons. Senna's outfit here is entirely different, possibly different enough to suggest that her personality used to be different, as she has a skirt instead of shorts, which I don't know if I could see actual
I feel like that's
Senna
cursed.
doing that outside of like formal situations, so that could be very different. Again, she has black leggings here, more matching Mio, and her primary colors are black and red. Those are Noah's primary colors in the final game, and Noah is also wearing those two colors here, so I definitely understand why they changed Senna's entire color aesthetic to be blue to match her hair, and then a little bit of yellow because it was a primary color that wasn't used, I guess. On her chest, it looks like her top has a red or pink lacy thing on it, but that circle there suggests to me that it could potentially be a rose-shaped decoration, which would tie her even closer to Bridget if that's the case. Without the pages directly dedicated to Senna's concept art, I can't say for sure what her connection to Bridget was supposed to be, or if it was intentional at all, but I think we could say, based at least on this picture, that it was supposed to exist at least at some point in development.
I still think it does.
And they either removed that reason or downplayed it later on.
Yeah.
Alright, that was the warm-up. Let's talk about the lore stuff. Pull up Lugabanda's blog post alongside the video if you want to read along with what I'm saying, and let's get started. First bullet point. Takahashi thanks his staff for working on the game remotely, implying at least some of the work for Xenoblade 3 was done from home during the pandemic.
Which makes sense.
This can't really be a surprise. Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition came out in May 2020, which means that it had to have been almost entirely done by the time anything resembling lockdown started in Japan for it to have come out at that time, so that makes sense. We also know Xenoblade 3's release date was moved up by a couple months,
which is crazy
tracks
still.
for it having been almost done earlier than 2022 as well. Not to mention the original rumors about it that came out a couple months before it was even revealed.
Yeah, which is
also
crazy.
Seems to imply that the game was nearly done.
That they were
which
right.
suggests that most of the late stages of development were done in 2020 and 2021, and barring COVID delays, which seem to have pushed everything Nintendo did back by like a year, the game could have been like a holiday 2021 release.
Oh,
that,
man.
coupled with the fact that it seems like they were sitting on a largely finished Xenoblade 3 for some extended period of time, means that we could be seeing the next proper Xenoblade game sooner than we think.
Which would
but
be
if I'm right about Xenosaga, and I'm probably right about Xenosaga, we're going to be seeing that in between. So get ready for Takahashi to make you violently angry with something related to that later, but we're not quite there yet.
Oh, I'm excited
Speaking
already.
of the name Xenosaga, though, the only time it appears in any of this stuff is in stuff that was not even translated by Lugal Banda. Xenosaga and Xenoblade X are mentioned, but only in the sense of artists or developers talking about having worked on it or having been inspired by those games, causing them to join Monolith in the first place. So we knew there was no Bandai Namco trademark on this book for months anyway. It was unlikely they would legally be able to talk about a lot of Xenosaga stuff in the first place, and if there's going to be a Xenosaga remake, they have to hold things closer to their chest until that's announced in the first place. So the focus of all of this stuff is just the trilogy, and I'm actually kind of glad it's that way. They can save the connections for when the connections actually start happening in the games themselves.
Yeah, I'm kind of fine with that.
Regarding the Black Fog, here is Takahashi's quote. Looking at the survey, the first thing that can be answered, I believe, is regarding the Black Fog. Basically, it's a sign that the worlds of 1 and 2 are approaching. Those signs are appearing in another world, the opposite world. For example, in Xenoblade Definitive Edition, the Fog King appeared on Shulk's side. Looking at it from a different perspective, a similar phenomenon was occurring on Rex's side. Just that this wasn't portrayed. In Xenoblade 2, I believe there's a monster called Infernal Guldo. As the worlds approach each other, a Guldo that is in the land of Moritha from 2 is being projected to the opposite world. That's the kind of phenomenon that's occurring. The Fog King, the Black Fog monsters, that's what that's all about. Put it simply, the two worlds have attached together partially, and the effect of that is a phenomenon in which you see the materialization of particles as a black fog. And when that is heightened, annihilation occurs. Quite a few of my staff might not know about this either. And by the way, the woman on the ID card that the Guldo drops is from an ordinary woman.
Yeah.
It is not Galea. This is, say it with me for the first time in this video, and definitely not the last, stuff that was basically said directly in the game, and when it wasn't, stuff I've been talking about since the game first.
I mean, it was kind of obvious.
It was already obvious that the Black Fog heralded annihilation events, and I've been saying since Future Connected came out that the Fog Beast and Fog King and the rifts there were some sort of heralding of worlds coming together. Also, the Infernal Guldo not being Galea is something that I have said probably since 2018. There is new information though. The Fog King and Fog Beast are basically Gnosis because they're projections of things from another world, so that does still track with what I've been saying. But we do have explicit confirmation that the Fog King looking like the Infernal Guldo is because it was literally a projection of a Guldo and not just an asset reuse thing.
Yeah.
It seems to imply that this is a different Infernal Guldo than the one from 2, so it's probably one that was still alive at the time in Xenoblade 2's world, as opposed to the dead Infernal Guldo that had been dead for a year, somehow being projected over.
I don't think that makes sense.
Heightened by the fact that, the Infernal Guldo was just some woman and not anyone important, which means this one is just a uniquely powerful Guldo being projected over, who is likely also not anyone important in the original world. We also do have confirmation now that something like Future Connected happened on the Xenoblade 2 side.
Which I wish we saw.
It's technically something we didn't know about. It's not explicitly said anywhere, so while you could reasonably guess after Xenoblade 3 that something like that was happening, we sort of didn't know that anyone from Alrest knew about Black Fog and that kind of thing until Ionio's happened. There's no game about it because we haven't gotten Xenoblade 2 Definitive Edition yet. Maybe we will in the future.
Maybe we
I
could.
don't know. Presumably, their most powerful Fog Beasts were some sort of projection of something from the Xenoblade 1 world that probably doesn't exist in the 2 one. I'm going to assume then that they fought Ghost Telethia because that's a really cool mental image. Next up, regarding if Lens is a Machina, Takahashi responds.
Which is obvious.
So
this is obvious.
Whether or not Lens is a Machina, yes, he is one, ... There are several paragraphs of discussion that he goes on that Ugabanda didn't bother translating because you should have known that Lens was a Machina.
Come on, that's so obvious.
That can't possibly be a surprise. That better not have been a surprise. According to machine translation, the rest of what he talks about starts with reminding you that the young Machina in Xenoblade 1 did look almost exactly like Homs with different skin and hair color, and that all of the unique stuff that they wear is actually just clothing and not part of their bodies.
Which makes so much sense.
Lens is closer to what a Machina looks like without all that stuff on, and he doesn't know about that stuff because Machina culture has been removed in Ionios, because thematic reasons. So, yeah, you should have known all this already.
Yeah, that's so obvious.
Alright, here's the part that's going to make you very mad or very excited, depending on what your opinions on some of Xenoblade 3 are.
Oh, I can't wait.
Takahashi says about the survey. Regarding most questions that were written in the survey, almost all of them have proper answers. However, I'm just not answering them now, since I don't think it's necessary at this point. So for those sorts of things, well, if Monolith Soft is fortunate enough to continue creating things in the future, then I think we will be able to answer it at a certain point. For example, I understand that there are many requests to see what happens after the ending. However, if we were to do that, we would have to make what lies further beyond from Xenoblade 3. So, I understand the sentiment, but please hold for a bit. If you can look forward to it and wait, that would be appreciated. We're doing a bit of reading between the lines here, but I interpret this as him saying, yeah, there's a reason that most of the lore explanations in here are just explaining subtext. If I don't talk about something here, chances are there is a canon explanation for it that has already been established. It's just going to be a spoiler for a future game,
which
so
I am
can't
excited
talk about
for.
it quite yet. please wait for Xenoblade 4, where you'll get some more answers. I think we kind of already figured that Xenoblade 4 was going to follow up on this continuity after the ending of Future Redeemed, and this is just a little bit more confirmation of that kind of thing. The only issue with all of this is that I think Xenosaga is coming next. And while yes, a proper remake of the Xenosaga trilogy will probably introduce some small retcons to tie it better into Xenoblade, they're not going to explain unanswered questions of Xenoblade 3 in that. So it'll actually be 2 games until some of this stuff has proper explanations. I don't know. Xenosaga better be next year. All the stuff I've been saying about how the next Xenoblade game might be sooner than we thought and not another 5 years better have been right. Oh god, this series is a very funny one. We are not allowed to get off the wild ride anytime soon.
So, I want to rewind, real quick.
Stuff has proper explanations.
You gotta be careful because it's not like...
Xenosaga is coming next. And while yes, a proper remake of the Xenosaga trilogy will probably introduce some small retcons to tie it better into Xenoblade, they're not going to explain unanswered questions of Xenoblade 3 in that. So it'll actually be 2 games until some of this stuff has proper explanations.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know. Xenosaga better be
I know Luxin likes to think a remake is coming. I feel like it's going to be a remaster, but of Xenosaga.
Better have been right. Oh god, this series is a very funny one. We are not allowed to get off the wild ride anytime soon. Next up is some genuinely new information about Origin. Regarding the advent of Origin. Regarding the world of Ionios, or rather the way Origin works, there is a proper reason for it. In actuality, there's this and that reason, and that's why this world is constructed as such. That kind of thing. Now that, I can't say it yet. Yeah, now is not the timing for that. Again, a lot of the explanation that makes Ionios easier to comprehend is well entrenched in Xenosaga spoilers, so if there is a Xenosaga thing coming next, it would behoove him to just wait until he can point at Xenosaga and say, yeah, pay attention to the encephalon and imaginary number domain. Ionios is one of those things. So for now, it's fine to think of it as basically a virtual world. That wouldn't be wrong. To put it simply, the administrator of that world could do anything, and in the main story of Xenoblade 3, that was Zed. That's the story, yes. I'm going to be very clear here. He is not saying Ionios was literally a simulation. It is closer to a dream world or cognitive realm. Like, it has more things in common with the other world in a Persona game than it does the Matrix, if that helps at all. It's a little complicated because Origin is at its heart a computer and is the thing responsible for Ionios, but it isn't literally a digital simulation of mishmashed parts of the worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2. That being said, because Origin is effectively a very big artificial blade, and because Otos was heavily involved in its construction, it still sort of works under computer rules, and Zed took over administrator privileges.
It's very complicated, but again, I'm sure we'll be explained
how
later.
he was able to control the world the way he did. Next up is a fairly long segment about the philosophy behind
I don't really
the
quite
villains.
understand it.
The villains of Xenoblade 3, Takahashi says, and as an editor's note, skipping over some parts, this isn't a complete translation of this section of the interview. I wanted to change a bit how the villains were portrayed. For example, in Xenoblade 1 and 2, the villains have their own pride or their own principles. It could be a philosophy or even faith, but the villains had their own sense of justice. But for Xenoblade 3, I had a bit of, what if I brought the enemies closer to reality? In terms of what is reality, let's say, for example, those in positions of power. Saying people in positions of power are villains is, well, a bit of a dangerous way to put it. Well, let's just say as an example. In real-life society, they are the system. As Zed says, they can decide on a system, and they can run it. Even for those people in positions of power, I'm sure they have a life story, social ties and such. But what we can see at the surface, what we can feel is their roots. Most of that is, how should I say this, a desire. A desire for control, money, fame, and maybe very rarely lust. That's where it tends to be rooted in, and occasionally some unsavory people show themselves. What if those people were the villains? So the villains this time around are the Mobius, and for them, I wanted to make them villains you couldn't sympathize with by exaggerating the unsavoriness and patheticness that real-life humans have. Towards the end of the story, I believe there's a scene where Zed says, "It's because it amuses me." But that line, it could be, "It's because 3-star restaurants taste delectable," or "It's because I love to make money." That line can be whatever. We place the Mobius in that position as a representation of that unsavory aspect of reality.
Which this
famously apolitical sword video game series strikes again.
This part makes me
bring out the purple
understand
Pikmin.
them more.
What's this doing here?
People... First of all, I love how the purple Pikmin is part of his channel now. Second of all, this line, when I read this, does make me understand and like Mobius more. I've grown to like them, especially because I played, Xenoblade 3 for a second playthrough, when before Future Redeem came out. So I understand them more as a concept. I just still prefer, even though what Takahashi or whatever is saying is true, because real people do exist, like Mobius, but there's also real people that are villains, bad guys in real life, but they also have clear goals and you can understand them even if they're wrong, So I think he's kind of, I get where he's coming from, but he's kind of slightly off when it comes to, real life portrays both villains, evenly, because life isn't black and white, you see both the good and bad. So anyway, the point being is I prefer Xenoblade 1 and 2's villains, but I at least now understand why they chose these villains, and I get them more. So anyway,
I've basically been interpreting Mobius as representations of powerful, unjust people in society who only use their power for their own benefit and don't care about anyone else, because that is what they are towards Ionios. And this is just confirmation that that was the real world inspiration for all of that. It was very intentionally about not even necessarily outwardly corrupt people in power, but selfish people in power, and how systems tend to be maintained to keep those people in power and not actually benefit anyone else. I also definitely don't think it was a mistake that the will of young people pushing for a brighter future is what ultimately topples Mobius.
I like that.
All of this real world, social and political inspiration was intentional, then I'm sure that part was too. Next up, commenting on N Sword. What's inside the Sword of the End that N holds?
Oh,
that
yeah,
would be
this is massive.
I mean, it's Malos, but Malos for the time being is dead or has disappeared. As to why Malos is there, I'm sorry about this, but I can't answer that at this point. But what N is holding there, that is Malos himself. Again, official confirmation of stuff I and other people have been talking about basically since Future
But it's still
came out.
crazy.
But this is slightly more than just that. It was fairly evident that Logos, to some degree, was involved with N Sword at the end. But this seems to be confirmation that it's no one else's souls from Origin involved in it. It's just the Logos core. And not just the Logos core, but Malos himself, which is not something we really thought about. We thought it was going to be a wiped clean Logos core and that Malos did completely die, but no, it does seem like, for the time being, he's either dead or gone. And, let's just talk about brand synergy for a minute here. Malos is the personification of Logos, who is part of the Trinity Processor. The Trinity Processor that is themed around the Christian Trinity of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Logos represents the Son, meaning, to at least some degree, Malos is inspired by Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. Do you know, a very iconic thing Jesus is known to have done, according to Christian teachings? We all thought that him disappearing at the end of Torna and coming back 500 years later was that. But no, apparently, he is going to come back again, and that is going to be the Xenoblade series' actual reference to the resurrection of Jesus. By the way, this book comes out a day after Easter.
Yeah.
How much of this was intentional? What are they actually trying to accomplish by doing this anymore? It's easy to make jokes about how Jesus physically shows up in a flashback in Xenosaga, but they're doing the exact same references they did in Saga again here.
And I love it.
And if Saga is now canon to this, that means it is just double Jesus. We have Jesus too now.
Double
this
Jesus.
is just largely another instance of Xenogames using Judeo-Christian references and symbology, and Xenogames reusing plot points and thematic elements from other Xenogames. But how does this work now that two sets of Xenogames that talked about the same stuff in different ways are now connected? Are there going to be people having to reckon with all of this? I don't know. That's a question for 4 years from now, probably. I'll see you in 2030. Yeah, we're not done with Trinity processing stuff either, by the way. Next up, regarding Matthew's Gauntlets. Matthew's Gauntlets. The Fists of the End. Numa is inside there, and therefore both Pyra and Mithra. You can think of it as both of their wills being present within the gauntlet. This, along with the Malos bullet point, does clear up something that I was unsure about even after Xenoblade 2. My little pet headcanon was basically that when Numa split into Pyra and Mithra, not only was it just a gift from Cloud to allow them to live separate lives, but also a way of maintaining the sanctity of the Trinity process. In the sense that, yeah, Numa is being split up, but because Malos was killed, we need a Logos and a Numa still, so one of them is still Numa, but the other one becomes the new Logos. With confirmation that Malos, not Logos, but Malos, is an end sword, and both Pyra and Mithra are representing Numa in the Fists of the End, that seems to indicate that Pyra and Mithra post-Xenoblade 2 are still both Numa. I doubt they're copies of Numa. They're probably, like, half of Numa. And if Numa is ever needed, they probably don't need to, like, actually fusion dance back into the green form. They can just both supply power to Rex at the same time, and they'll be able to still do all the same Numa stuff he could do before. But Logos is still a completely separate entity from Pyra or Mithra.
Come on, they should fusion
all
dance.
All three of the siblings from Xenoblade 2 still persist to some degree.
Now, when I hear fusion dance, I think Steven Universe, not Dragon Ball.
If you can't say why Malos is in the sword yet, it's another Xenoblade 4 thing. My guess is Testament Malos. Play Xenosaga. Takahashi follows this up with more information about who was in specific weapons. Regarding Lucky 7, and Lucky 7, which no one...
Oh yeah, this is another big lore
This is actually, this is not mentioned within the story, but Fiora is inside of it. In regards to the above statement about Lucky 7, nobody that was present for the interview seemed to be aware of this information, and the statement caused a bit of a stir, with all of them simply asking in response, Fiora? Elaborating on it, he states, while some people like Shulk and Rex appear in this world in the flesh, some people appear as an object, and that is an expression or reflection of their traits or thoughts. Things like, how can I change this world? I think this is the best way to do so.
A sword.
Think of it as something like that. So, I've obviously been saying, since the game came out, that other party members from Xenoblade 1 and 2 were present in Lucky 7. I was right in that Fiora is in Lucky 7, but I was wrong in that only Fiora is in Lucky 7.
Yeah.
The big thing here, and the only truly new piece of information, is a proper explanation of how Origin avatars work. The only confirmed ones we've seen so far were ones where the characters physically manifested into the world as something resembling their previous forms from the original world. As Takahashi said, like...
Oh, hey Caroline, welcome to the stream. Bonjour, indeed. Anyway, I was going to say, what is going on? I'm reacting to a bunch of Luxin videos. That's literally what the stream is called. This is the first one. We have 4 more to go. We're probably not going to get through 4 of them, but we'll probably get through the other 2. Yeah. Anyway, I was going to say how this makes me think the statue of Dormark that is Adnia's like castle thing, where she's asleep, that is actually Dormark and it's not just a head, like it's actually like made to look like him. It's actually the avatar or whatever. So.
Hulk and Rex. But now we know that characters' avatars can also be in the form of certain objects.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure if all of these special objects have to be made out of Origin Metal. However, some machine-translated parts of this passage seem to indicate that Takahashi then goes on to describe that all the pieces of Origin Metal you pick up throughout the playthrough probably have some characters in them, but he hasn't decided who's in which one specifically, so you're allowed to headcanon which one is Ryan, for example. I kind of doubt every single generic shard of Origin Metal you can find in the world that's used for upgrading the character's blades is an important character.
Don't ban me, but I've never played Xenoblade. How dare you? I'm not gonna ban you. I'm gonna time you out now. No, I know it's fine. Xenoblade. Yeah, you misspelled it. But I recommend it. Xenoblade is crazy, which you probably shouldn't, because this has lots of lore stuff. So I don't know if you should be watching this, but yeah. Anyway, because I'm, along with reacting to it, I'm discussing what he's talking about, with my own thoughts. So I don't know if it's right but I mean, I appreciate the support.
Like, yeah, some of them are probably minor NPCs or like rare blades or stuff like that. But my guess would be that specifically these shards of Origin Metal you need to upgrade the boundary into the Bravery are important characters, as well as every single piece that Nia herself used to make an Ouroboros stone. Also remember, the blade, the inner metal part of Noah's Lucky 7.
Tornado watts? Oh, uh-oh. Where on your area? Oof. Also, is Luxin gonna bring up the statue of Dormark? How it might be just Dormark?
Is Fiora, or contains Fiora rather, while N's entire weapon appears to just contain Malos, despite the fact that he has an outer sword and an inner metal Lucky 7 like Noah does. It seems like his entire thing is Malos. This article does not confirm or deny whether or not Riku used parts of what was left over from Matthew's Fists of the End to help construct Noah's
The statue of Dormark, it's
as a young soldier. So
see, that's why I'm saying, like, it's basically a tiger thing or whatever that's in Xenoblade 2. See, oh my god. I don't know again if it's a good idea.
It's possible that Noah's weapon does contain Numa, as in Pirate and Mithra, and Fiora, and I think that does make sense, because that would mean that, yes, Numa and Logos combine to defeat Ontos at the end of Future Redeemed, but also that Noah versus N is basically a rematch of Numa versus Malos in Xenoblade 2, and after Noah returns N to being part of him, he then once again has both Logos and Numa fighting against a usurper of Ontos, that is Zed. Going back to the virtual world metaphor, it makes sense that some people manifest as people and some people manifest as objects. The word used is avatar for a reason, and it seems like it is avatar in like the online sense. Some of your profile pictures are people, some of them are yourselves, some of them are characters, some of them are just other humans out there in the world, and some of them are not. Like, Fiora's profile picture in Ionios is a sword, so her will is not.
So wait, I will be a sword too? That's my
Schultz's
profile picture.
was a selfie, so he manifests as Schultz's body. But either way,
yeah, I guess I will be manifested as the Monado from, the sword. So the only thing I know about Xenoblade is the characters that are in Smash. Sulk, Pyra, Mithra, that's it. Yeah.
Still, those characters' wills moving on to try and help the soldiers free themselves from the flame clock and free the entire world from Mobius. Other things that I think are candidates for actually being other important characters are the Ricky Biter you can find in Lomac the Wildwood, guarded by a super boss.
Yeah.
That could just be Ricky and not something in commemoration of him, which means that yes, you can equip Ricky to Riku if that's true. As well as the special unique Legacy of the 7 accessories that you can find in relatively late game areas and side quests. Editing Luxin with speculation not directly backed up by anything in the interview.
Talk about the statue.
I think we now can make a good guess about what it specifically means to have a weapon of the End. N's Sword of the End is known to have Malos in it. Matthew's Fists of the End are known to have Pyra and Mithra in it. And there is a difference between Lucky 7 and the Sword of the End. So I am thinking this is more potential indication that Noah's blade does contain the Numa core or the Numa origin metal as well, and the distinction between just Lucky 7, which is just Fiora, and the Sword of the End, which is her and potentially Numa as well, is him awakening and being able to use the Numa powers. Again, when Lucky 7 is awakened, he can use Monado arts, which backs that up as well, though obviously Fiora was a Monado wielder in her past life, so it could come from her too. To properly explain why Fiora manifested as the sword
one thing I just don't understand about this crazy lore thing, which just trips me up, is how does Numa go from Matthew's fists or whatever to Noah's sword when they're not well, they are connected, but like in like a weird clone thing that's going on, but like they're not like directly connected. So again, Xenoblade stuff if you don't know, but I just don't know exactly how, unless this power of Numa is like spread around, and like it's I don't know how you would do this. This video is an hour long. How long are the rest? Another video is an hour long, but the other 3 videos are like 20 or 30 minutes. So we may react to all of them, but we also may not, because I do talk. Like, what, we're 35 minutes into this video, but like on the stream we're 46 minutes in. So because I talk a lot as well, we might only get to do some videos. So yeah.
And not just any old, slightly better than usual sword. We'll take reading several more bullet points because the game's actual director.
Oh wait, whoa, let me read this. One of two directors alongside Jinki Yokota. I suck at pronouncing names, man, especially Japanese names, but in names in general. Takahashi is credited as a scenario writer, voice director, and executive director.
Makes a joke about Noah throwing Lucky 7 into the ocean at the end of the game. And Takahashi starts by riffing on this, but then uses it as a jumping off point to explain some more in-depth things. It's not explicitly canon, or at least not confirmed in the parts that have been translated, but when I'm reading through this and discussing it, I'm going to go under the assumption that Noah's blade by the end of Xenoblade 3 also contains the Numa bits of Matthew's Fists of the End, in addition to the part of the sword that is Fiora's will.
Oh my god, see?
Kojima asks Takahashi,
how is that even?
Noah threw Lucky 7 into the ocean at the end of the game. Was that okay? Presumably he's joking here because Fiora is the sword and has already almost drowned once already, so you don't want that to happen again. Takahashi responds as follows. This conversation, how do I put this? It deals with the fundamental aspect of Origin. Origin in Ionios, you can think of it broadly as a virtual world. Think of it like a server in a virtual world. It actually isn't the case, but this will be fine for demonstration purposes. And within that, there's source code that's running. And as a way to express that, it can take the form of a sword, but also not. And Alvis was responsible for the general management of Origin systems. As the administrator, Alvis was quietly watching for a while after Origin started up. As this was happening, Zed, a partial administrator and collective conscious-like entity, starts doing things on its own. The story of Future Redeemed starts when Alvis deems this unacceptable. Continuing, he states, many things happen after that, but A ends up siding with Shulk & Co., so there was no longer a general admin. And so, Zed replaced that position, and that's why Zed can mess with the source code. Making the human lifespan 10 years and observing it because it's amusing and things like that, although the 10-year lifespan was a change made to the code prior to Future Redeemed.
Yeah.
Basically, you could do a whole lot of things. He can be brazen about it. When thinking about what can be done to break that source code, this is where you use external powers. I believe this was stated in the story, but a kind of power that exists outside the flow will be necessary. In regards to what that power would be, it could be the power of the will of young people living in this world, and regardless of Numa or Logos, it's the same kind of entity as Alvis, and thus an external factor from Zed's point of view. Therefore,
why does the girl have cat ears? Is it peepers? That's called Gormati, not a cat girl, but yes, he is a cat girl. But yeah, Gormati they have cat ears. So, but they also, I think they both also have normal ears, so they have like two sets of ears. It's like weird. I don't know.
Fighting these powers and we're taking the world for ourselves. That would be the broad.
So that guy is a robot.
Things. He adds by saying, to put it bluntly, Alvis, who was one person that was the core processor, as well as the possessor of the Minato, Shulk, and similarly, the possessor, no, partner of the same processor, Rex. These three sustain the world, and the main characters outside of those are lending their strength to the characters in Ionios. That's the structure. So when Noah throws Lucky 7 into the ocean at the end, he was like this. He was pondering like this before throwing it. That was like saying thanks to the sword. Thanks for everything, that kind of thing. Something like, the battle is over and a new world is starting. Thank you. And thus it's liberated. Return to the world. It was returned to the world.
Yeah, returned by tossing it to the ocean.
Obviously Kojima was joking around about, oh no, it's a terrible thing, Fiora is going to get rusty now, ooh. The explanation for that is exactly what we expected when we were theorizing about Lucky 7 containing multiple people and more than just one. Noah is saying goodbye to the sword, thanking it for its service, even though he doesn't know it contains people's souls or anything, and being grateful that it's no longer necessary to fight, so he is throwing it into the ocean as symbolism of moving on to a newer, better world that doesn't require such things. Because the people in the sword are in Origin, they're going to get restored like everyone else who is in Origin.
Hey, that's like a 10%, I'm gonna have to... Wait, what? Hey, there's like a 10% chance I'm going to have tornadoes tonight, and it's clear, and a crystal clear outside. Man, I feel my weather is worse than you. It's like windy outside and cloudy. So yeah. But then you hear people, there's like people outside having like some sort of barbecue. I have no idea why. You could maybe hear it at points. So yeah.
And even like people who became physical.
But good luck, stay safe, either way.
Will also be restored later on. So that's largely another thing I've been saying, but the wording here is slightly ambiguous in a way I didn't expect it to be, where you could interpret it as the sword returning to Origin when Noah throws it, and not when Origin kicks back in and the world's a reset. So, like, I was under the impression that he throws Lucky 7, it lands in the water and sinks to the bottom of Arithia Sea, then everyone in it gets restored to their normal bodies when Origin reboots. But I guess you could also read it as the sword disintegrating into light motes and returning people to Origin when he throws it. So, like, as soon as it dips below the edge of Keves Castle and Noah can't see it anymore, it vanishes and Fiora, Pyra, and Mythra are back to where they were in Origin, and then they're rebuilt. That means literally nothing. It has zero impact on anything, but I guess it's a possibility now.
Which would actually be kind of cool. Imagine we saw Pyra and Mythra here.
Of these passages.
Physically.
What actually matters is the new Alvis stuff. And this clarifies a few things, namely how Mobius came to be in the first place. I was under the impression that the Ontos core went dormant after Xenoblade 1 and stayed that way until Alpha woke during Future Deemed, but it appears that that wasn't exactly the case, and Origin actively included Alvis as an administrative personality to some degree in its design, in addition to just involving the Ontos core in its construction and basing its structure on it. From this, it seems like something like Zed coming into existence was always intended, that there was going to be a collective unconscious type entity arising simply because so many people's consciousnesses were stored in one place. But the fact that he ended up becoming Mobius and embodying that will and wanting Ionios to exist was what was unintended. Zed wasn't entirely subversive in what he did to Origin. It appears that this entity was always supposed to be some sort of sub-administrator with some degree of influence over it in case something went wrong, but because Ionios came into existence, Zed wanted it to remain that way and was able to go behind Alvis's back to start creating things, like the 10-year cycle, the colonies, the flame clocks, and all that. Basically, he got the world to the point where it was in Future Deemed, and a few years before then, Alvis finally took notice and was either influenced by the idea of Mobius or corrupted by it in a way, or simply saw that the people of the original worlds were doing what Zed was doing and causing all of this suffering in the first place, and decided that only the new life in Ionios was worth saving, thus leading to Alpha.
Stuff.
This completely explains something we couldn't figure out about Future Deemed. The first scene of Future Deemed, where Zed refers to Alpha as his god. Alpha did initially have a higher position in the chain of command for Origin, but after he was destroyed in Future Deemed, Zed was able to take over that role. It also makes the parallels that X, Y, and Z have to Numa, Logos, and Ontos respectively make more sense. Zed wasn't just pulling the concept of the Trinity processor out of people's memories, he was being the representative of Ontos in his own Mobius Trinity, specifically because he was usurping a captain's chair that belonged to the real Ontos in the first place. We were memeing on Dirk talking about the passage of fate and that never meaning anything, but it actually kind of makes a little bit more sense now. The passage of fate he mentions is the same thing as the flow Zed always talks about, and it seems like that is kind of similar to the passage of fate in Xenoblade 1, largely because they're referring to the world as dictated by Ontos. All that Zed can control is the Ontos stuff of Origin. Ouroboros was created by a union of Logos's and Numa's power, so it is able to subvert Mobius' influence. And any avatars or origin metal that carry the will of people from Xenoblade 1 or 2 are also able to subvert it. Not because they have Aegis power of any sort, but because they're able to lend their strength to the wills of young people,
which is a cool way to think about it.
Which directly opposes not only the kind of change Ontos himself wanted as Alpha, but also the kind of stasis that Zed wanted after taking on the pseudo-Ontos role. It also seems like it specifically
Why there's so much lore? Because Xenoblade is a lot about lore. What do you mean? Also, an art book came out a month ago, at April 1st, which you think would be a setup for a joke, but no, it came out on April 1st, and it was an art book that also had a lot of interviews for it, but the series itself does have lots of lore. That's why I love so much about
who stepped into
Zero
Origin
Blade.
to keep Ionios propped up for 1,000 years, and it couldn't have been any of the party members to do it. It was actually their close relationship to the Trinity processor that allowed them to sustain Origin systems in a way. A is the only remaining piece of Ontos after Alpha is destroyed, and in reality, I kind of view A as Shulk's blade, if that makes sense, at least in terms of where A's personality came from and relationships and philosophy and all that. But regardless, the actual Ontos themselves. Then Shulk, who was a previous Monado wielder and had access to the full power of Ontos in the past, and then Rex, who apparently, just by having married Numa twice, is also on the same level as those two. The next bullet point is something that really shouldn't have needed to be said at all. Speaking about the people of the city, he has this to say. After that, it's...
Splatoon has a lot of lore too, a lot of it. You could argue it's slightly more impressive for Splatoon because it's made mostly by Nintendo themselves. Monolith Soft is owned fully by Nintendo, but it's not made by Nintendo, if that makes sense. Well, with Splatoon, Monolith Soft does work on the game for the graphics, which is why it looks so good, Splatoon, but mostly Nintendo does the work, so you could argue maybe it's slightly more impressive for Splatoon to have crazy lore.
Time to say farewell. It's split between the Kevesi, the people of Bionis, and the Agnians, the people of Alrest. And in another corner, there's the people of the city, and those three make up the structure. But I saw quite a number of comments in the survey asking about what happened to the people in the city. So to answer that, and this is something that I believe you can also understand from the information in the story.
Which is sad, basically.
The people of the city, their life that doesn't exist in the original two worlds. And yet, they still exist, despite Origin being something like a memory machine that collected data from both worlds. This is in fact a suggestion that the two worlds will become one, and that these people will absolutely be born in the future. That's the structure. So yes, Gondor, Monica, they will be born in the new world.
Eventually.
When he says that you should be able to understand this from the information in the story, he's not just pointing out bad media literacy. He's pointing out bad regular literacy. Gondor looks directly into the camera and says this in the final cutscene.
But people are stupid.
Hopes amongst hope that there is a chance that people of the city will be reborn, and, given all the indications that the worlds combine again, and everything everyone wanted will actually happen in the end, this was a foregone conclusion from the instant you saw the ending of the base game for the first time.
I don't understand why.
It shouldn't have taken
I understand some people. Oh my god, some people with Xenoblade 3 are really stupid when they, when they say, "Oh, this doesn't make sense." I agree. A lot of Xenoblade 3, they don't tell you a lot, but most of it is basically confirmed. This is not outright said. But a lot of people still have trouble with it. There's some points where I agree, I wish Xenoblade 3 was a little bit more clear about this or that. And then that's where Future Redeemed comes in, the DLC, where it makes things a little bit more clear. But for lots of people to be oh, this doesn't make sense when it's clearly explained, it makes me wonder what's going on with us. Are humans okay? Are we okay? Are we okay? Are we just getting stupider? Because, Gondor literally says, she hopes that life will be reborn, which I think made sense, because the world's, Xenoblade 3 basically, again, it's a simulation, kind of, sort of, not really, but sort of. But eventually, at the end of Xenoblade 3, the worlds will combine. Xenoblade 1 and 2's worlds will combine fully, not like how they did in Xenoblade 3, where it was kind of improper, but they were fully combined, so the people there will meet, and then eventually, the citizens of Ionios will be reborn again, improperly. So, yeah. But lots of people are stupid. I don't know why.
This was known. The only ambiguity here is how exactly people will be reborn, and that's simply because The sequence of events that led to everyone from the city
I don't know how I could explain it better than that, Caroline.
is not going to happen again because the cycle doesn't exist, and everyone who is soldiers is now just living a normal lifespan in the same world at the same time. So, while yes, Noah and Mio are still going to get together and make a Gondor, when the other people get reincarnated, they might not literally be as the children of the same parents they had the first time, and things like the race, their sex, their hair and eye color might be different, though it will still be recognizably the same person. There is a chance, say, that yes, Noah and Mio have a child that is Old Man Gondor, but then another couple, maybe one that never met or never had children within Ionios, of two people who became soldiers, they will get together and they'll have a kid who uses the soul of Monica. So, like, Monica will still happen, but within the same generation as Old Man Gondor,
which will be
was
crazy.
over 1,000 years older than her.
Do I think it would be like
of generations? Or we'll get something like
I don't know.
being able to have Matthew and Niall actually interact with relatively younger versions of Noah and Mio, simply because these versions of them were not their direct
I guess that makes
descendants, and
more
they were born
sense
in a
than what I
generation
was thinking,
earlier
but I still think
than Noah
both
and
do make
Mio's
sense.
grandkids.
Because imagine you see, we would have to wait like 1,000 years in the future. Like it would be like Xenoblade 8 or whatever or they could skip ahead like in Xenoblade 4. Like for us to see these characters again, like the new guys, and then the old characters will be completely dead and buried. So, yeah, I guess it makes more sense to see how Luxin sees it. This is what happens when you take a person who only plays Xenoblade and so them a different game.
Took so many unlikely events happening for any
Yeah.
given pair of soldiers to actually have a kid together in the first place. There are going to be less kids from the generation that was just directly born of two soldiers than there will be kids that generation has in the combined world. So they're going to start immediately having to pull from Souls in Origin in future generations. And while we don't know population numbers, it'll probably only be a few generations before all the souls of city folk in Origin are exhausted and actual new people will be created for the first time again. In a slight clarification, the next bullet point says that Noah and his friends are fighting for a world in which city people can be properly born. Lugobando leaves this just paraphrased because this will be touched on later in more thorough and more extensive translations by a larger group of people, but I think the intent is still clear. While the city people being reborn is only really mentioned in Mia's hero quest, which canonically takes place before the final battle, but you can't unlock it until after you've beaten the game once, and in the ending cutscene, it seems like making a world for the city people, in addition to freeing all the soldiers and setting things to right, was an intended, stated goal of the main party before the final battle, and this kind of thing wasn't just sprung on them after the fact.
Which makes sense.
Takahashi says that through the lens of Nietzsche, Noah as a character can be understood to be an ubermensch that rejects nihilism. You should play the Xenosaga series. Its games are directly titled after publications by Friedrich Nietzsche. You will understand all of this a whole lot more if you do. Next up, Luxin do believe that it's Riku time. On the subject of Riku, Takahashi says, Riku, he's sly. He's doing all these things while completely understanding everything that's going on. When he says in the city, meh, there's something tiny and cute over there, he's saying that on purpose, to bring attention to it. Saying, hey, look there, there's a really tiny person, and look, it's different from you guys. And getting an emotional response out of them, I suppose. He's a bit two-faced, isn't he? His master pawn is Melia. So Melia has entrusted him with what is basically Fiora. And of course, he is also one of Ricky's sons, yes.
Yeah.
Speaking about Riku's explanations about the Lucky Seven and its grandiose origins, specifically about the line, 7 legendary swordsmith pawn, over a course of 7 years, forged from 7 types of steel, Takahashi says those were quote-unquote convenient lies that Riku made up. So yes, I believe we can just take the Riku lie counter and send it to Mobius Infinity, because he made up even more stuff than we knew about. Also, wow, Riku was Ricky's son and not Kino's? I wonder if I made a video like last week that rigorously explained why that's probably the case. Yeah. Honestly, this entire Riku section is more or less reinforcing everything I said in the Riku video. Who could have possibly guessed that it would age well this quickly? The only real thing is to point out a mistranslation. The real reason we were surprised that Fiora was the only one in Lucky 7 is because Riku uses plural when talking about the amount of people in Lucky 7. Now, this is to be expected as a thing that could happen in localization simply because the nature of singular versus plural nouns is more ambiguous in Japanese, and I believe the line where Riku's talking to Matthew and says important people are in the sword leans a little bit more towards singular in the original Japanese, though English is not the only localization to get this wrong. But I think I know where the mistake came from. And that is when Riku is talking to Shulk in a story cutscene, not an optional one, he specifically says that important people are here, mentioning Lucky 7, and also with Shulk here, mentioning Shulk's Monado Rex Plus. So the intent behind this scene was probably either Riku being metaphorical and just saying that, yes, the wills of all of Shulk's friends are there helping because of the origin medal, or saying that, yeah, Fiora's in Lucky 7 and someone else, maybe Ryan or Dunban, is in Shulk's weapon, and the localizers took that ambiguity and thought he was referring to multiple people being in Lucky 7 itself. This is a very easy explanation for a very reasonable mistake to make. Next, more
easy mistake to make. I would probably do the same.
On the Napon, he has this to say. In this world,
do I make a lot of mistakes?
Napon are external entities residing outside the flow, so they don't have a lifespan. They live forever. The Monado lie counter is now equal to the Riku lie counter. Napon have just committed to the bit really hard. That is hilarious. This is not the full translation of the passage, and I don't think I'm really going to fully explain it until a full translation of that entire Napon explanation is given.
I will say, what if Monada's not? Monada is the female Napon, the pink one or whatever. Anyway, Luxin says that her lie counter is up to. What if she's just younger? Like, she's actually a young Napon that was just born into the world. Yes, Napon kind of exist outside of the thing, and they're kind of weird creatures or whatever. They exist outside of the world. But what if she was just born somewhat recently and she doesn't know that they live forever? So, you get to a certain age where you're like, you're like 100 and you find out, you live forever, you look the same way or something. I don't know. Hey, welcome to the stream, Blaze Xenoblade. Welcome to the stream where we're watching Xenoblade videos. But yeah, maybe Monada is in line about the not knowing about babies and humans and all that stuff. What if she's just a new Napon, born in the world? That is a game theory,
Just because there is some context missing that would ruin the discussion if I tried to fully talk about it now, but I do believe any Napon with an age on the affinity chart in the main game was just lying about it, which is amazing. Next up.
And then I don't think so. I don't think so. There's a lot of Napon that don't have an age in the affinity chart in Xenoblade 3 or Future, I forgot where it was. But anyway, Luxin says, again, that these people, these Napon were lying about their ages. I don't think so. What if maybe some of them were. I'm not going to put it past. Riku lies about everything. So maybe some of them do lie. But maybe they were born, a couple of them were born into the world, and I don't know. Movie time. Yes, movie time. And we still have more videos to watch after this.
Kojima notes that some survey responders asked about why Shulk and Rex have lived for such a long time. To which Takahashi responds, Shulk and Rex haven't lived long, have they? Origin is only a recreation of the worlds that used to exist. If you think of them as being emulated, they should only...
Technically 4? Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3, but there's also Xenoblade X, which isn't connected to anything, at least directly. There's also the Xeno games, which is Xenogears and Xenosaga, but those are they were made by the same people as Xenoblade, but they're not made by Nintendo. Xenogears is made by Square Enix, or it was published by Square Enix, and then Xenosaga is published by Bandai Namco, and there's legal trouble with those games, so they can't directly connect to them, even though they share a lot of lore, a lot of things where,
Being able to live what their lifespan is. Shulk and Rex, they defeat Alpha some years after arriving to Ionios.
No, there's 4.
Sustaining it after that. How should I say this? Their rank is the same as Alva's and the rest of the Trinity processor. This is also true for Melia, Nia, and Fiora, who possess maintenance Monado. In other words, if the admin handles it, anything can be done. If the source code of that world is written as a recreation of reality, then if, for example, the lifespan was set as 80 years old, when they say they can give their lifespans to Glimmer and Nicole, they can if they rewrite the code. But you normally shouldn't do that, because you don't know what kind of glitches will occur. In response, A says that this is against the rules. That's sort of the idea there. I brought this up as a possibility.
I mean, I don't count the. You could count the. No, not really. I don't count. If you want to count the DLC, then Torna would be one. You could argue Future Connected. So really, if you want to count the DLCs or expansions or epilogues, whatever, Future Redeemed, Future Connected, and Torna, the Golden Country, it's technically 7 Xenoblade games, if you want to argue. Like, if you really want to argue. But I don't count the DLC. Even though Torna was a separate, you could technically buy a separate, but like I just count it as DLC. So if you really want to specify, it's like 7 games. If you really. Anyway, I just want to play. Well, you can play Splatoon, Caroline. Although keep the stream up because I don't know why not. Also, it helps me with my watch time. But there's no problem playing Splatoon. I need to play Splatoon later today.
A while ago, but yeah, people whose physical bodies are brought into Ionios as avatars of Origin didn't necessarily all come into Ionios at the same time. Shulk and Rex seems like they only popped up when they were initially needed to fight Alpha in the first place. The fact that this timescale is potentially different also suggests to me that, yeah, only children from the original worlds could be born as soldiers. Basically, it's not that Shulk and Rex are like Napon and don't age at all within Ionios. It's that they were only in Ionios for a couple years, so they're already old enough for aging a couple years isn't too visibly noticeable, and then after that, they sort of ascended to having a pseudo-Trinity processor role alongside A, propping the world up. So
yes,
they
it
then
does have a
went
lot
beyond
of lore.
the concept of aging.
So
in the
much
first
lore,
place.
Future Redeemed. Oh my god, I love it.
That of mortal people.
And in fact, it was my game of the year, which is not even a game. I made an executive decision. My 2023 game of the year was Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed, which is not even a game. It's a DLC, but I mean, it's as long as like most normal games. So.
And they were able to mess around with the source code of the world and give their initial flag to die after 80 years instead of after 10 years to Nicole and Glimmer. A is only potentially against this because it might cause glitches in the system and screw things up later on. Honestly,
like
Shulk and Rex messing around like
chosen,
this, screwing around with the lifespan of one Kavesi and one Agian, might even be how Noah and Neo were able to get back in the system after they both had homecoming.
That would actually make sense.
That's genuinely a possibility. In that case, A was being way too cautious because, like, that glitch is the reason the world survived. And, yeah, A is just being reserved and Otos-like, while Shulk and Rex were being, hey, no, if Pyra, Mithra, or Malos were here, they'd just let us do this without complaining at all because it's the right thing to do. Yippee. Shulk and Rex's increased rank is specifically because they stepped into Origin to prop up Ionios, and wasn't intrinsic to them like it seems was the case for A and Melia and Nia. Melia and Nia makes sense because they're the queens. We now know that Lucky 7 was partially Fiora's doing in addition to Melia, so Nia kind of has the better creation of things with Origin Metal feet now, but, like, the queens are said to be on even keel. They fight on even keel in the final battle. Neo was able to make the Ouroboros stones, which are able to subvert Mobius and the Will of Origin in a major way, so it makes sense that those two are also of a higher rank, and more or less indicates that the reason they don't physically age throughout Ionios' history isn't because they're in stasis or anything, but because they're on the Trinity Processor immortal tier of influence within the world, so they're above that. Remember, Shulk and Rex were not of that tier until the end of Future Redeemed, so they were immortal with old age.
Yeah, that is right.
The big deal, though,
I just wish they. I mean, it was
Fiora,
subtext, but I still wish they told them it was, that we're your father, even though they wouldn't have understand at all. They would have been like, what the heck is a father, because they don't understand. But I still kind of wish they told them that they were connected or whatever.
Is also Trinity Processor level, and this makes sense. She is the lighter colored Lucky 7, which is the counterpart to the black Lucky 7, which we now know is Malos, an actual Trinity Processor person. So yeah, it makes sense. The swords are able to fight on even keel. It is the power of Ouroboros and having allies that makes Noah win out over N in the first place. So, yeah, Fiora is also...
Why A is not one of Rex's daughters? Why? A is part of Alvis. Why? They split up and then it's part of Alvis or whatever. But yeah, you gotta go. I forgot you did the happy birthday thing, even though it was no one's birthday. Happy birthday to you too. But no problem. See you later, Caroline. See you later. Hope to see you again. But yeah, A is not one of. They look somewhat similar, but
on Trinity
it's part of
processing
Alvis.
so. Like, yeah, obviously, Lucky 7 subverts Mobius, it cuts flame clocks. That all works out, no problem. The big deal, though, is that Fiora is at this
more
level
connected to
because
Salt,
she too is a Monado wielder. All of the Manus stuff came back around and allowed Fiora to
my
be
super
worthy of
controller is
manifesting
gonna
herself
die.
with this much power within Ionios. Fiora stocks are through the roof, and the explicit mention of Manus Monado here, alongside Galea Galdo being deconfirmed, really heavily hints that there's part of Galea out there in some other universe we've yet to see. Next, about the light motes. About golden motes, he has this to say. Golden motes, that's ascension, translator's note in the context of death. Yeah, dissipation. And it turns into a form that's difficult, no, impossible for Zed and the Mobius to use. Disappearing to outside their systems without being used by the Mobius. Basically, homecoming, citizens, anyone not in the cycle who dies, they get golden motes. That just basically means they can't be brought back into the cycle unless you're Noah and Mio.
Mm-hmm.
Lastly, Takahashi says the hooded boy at the start of Chapter 6 is a part of N that resides deep within Noah's psyche. This time I'm going to tell you to play Xenogears instead of Xenosaga. As an additional bit of context, this is noticeable if you look at the machine translation as well, but I also was able to find a while ago, young Noah's dub voice actor did a commentary of the scenes he appears in, and also says that hooded Noah in the flashback is a combination of young Noah and Neo. So it's the Xenogears reference and also a slight bit of Neo and M post-mind swap helping him along the way to self-actualize. The last bullet point is simply Takahashi's outro to the interview. The final comment. Xenoblade was released in 2010, and some of our customers have been with us throughout those 14 years, continuing to follow us. That makes me deeply emotional.
Matt is Noah's son, and Niall is Mio's daughter. I don't know 100%. Probably not though. Have you? Like, I understand there's a lot of lore to keep up, but I mean, you're kind of not wrong, but you're also kind of wrong at the same time. Like, it's like I don't know, like, like so. Oh hey Sam, welcome to the stream. I just saw you play Fortnite, or you popped that in. Yeah, how do you like? Look, like Matthew and Niall, they're actually Noah and Mio's or N and M's like great grandchildren. It's not their kids. Technically, like again, N and M and Noah and Mio are kind of the same people, but kind of not. It's kind of weird, like how. But yeah, they are related to Noah and Mio, or N and M more specifically, but as like great grandchildren if you think about it. Anyway, hello Samuel Adams. Oh my god. And how long will the stream be? Like 3 or 4 hours? Well, I just got the notification that my Pro controller is gonna die, but I'll probably just switch the Joy-Cons after we're done with this video, which we're almost done, so we can watch like 2 more videos. I don't know if we'll be able to get through all the 5 videos I need to catch up on, but we'll get through more videos, so I'll probably switch to the Joy-Cons in a bit. So yeah, so probably around 3 hours, maybe 4 actually.
The only thing I have to say to that is thank you. We would like to continue to meet the expectations of those who have supported us in that way. With up to Xenoblade 3 finished, I'm sure there's plenty of customers who feel that this isn't enough. They want to know this or that, and that this book isn't enough to cover it. But we have heard those voices from our customers loud and clear. Gradually, I suppose or in the future, during the creation process, we would like to respond to those voices. So please, look forward to that. That would be it. Yes. We already knew there were intentions to continue the Xenoblade series, and after future games, we already knew that there were intentions to continue this specific continuity of Xenoblade. But here it looks like Takahashi accidentally showed his hand as to the real purpose of the survey. And that is basically what the Smash ballot in Smash 4 was. Yeah, the only stuff that can really be explained in this interview is clarifying subtext, because anything else would be a spoiler for future games. They're taking feedback and questions that fans want answered here, but they can't answer the ones that aren't already evident within the game themselves because they're taking notes for how to include concepts from that in future games. Just in this art book, there's not really
Either that or they started watching my videos at my list office and this happened. Who had never thought of any of that?
to elaborate on all that kind of stuff more, but in Xenoblade 4,
My Switch is dead, so give me a few minutes. Okay.
Only one character was included from the Smash ballot because the whole purpose
Who's
of
Nia's kid? Neo? Again, did you not play Xenoblade at all? Like, I'm starting to wonder if you even know at least anything of Xenoblade 3. Okay, well, I gotta go. I get a sour, so it works out. So see you later in a little. Okay, no problem, Sam. No problem at all. But yeah, Nia's kid is Neo. Well, Nia and Rex's kid.
Ballot wasn't to decide Smash 4's last DLC character, but to gauge interest in who people might want to see as newcomers in Smash Ultimate. This is, I think, exactly what's going on here, which means that yes, while it's probably going to be a while because Xenosaga, there's a lot to look forward to in the next Xenoblade game. I am not making a big outro this time. We got more art book stuff to look into. Until then, this is Luxin, signing off.
And then that's
agenda. This video will not contain spoilers for any specific Xeno game, but
okay, so agenda. This is the second video that I need to watch, but oh wait, no, that's the not. This is the. I thought it was still continuing on. I watched the video already. This is the video before I fell behind on Xenoblade stuff for Luxin.
Yet again. So
I played the third one, not the first or second.
Thank you.
Well, then that explains it. Okay, that explains it because you should be playing Xenoblade 1 and 2 to understand everything, really. Especially because they're on Switch. There's really, unless you're poor like me, but really there's no major excuse because they are available on the Switch compared to stuff like even Xenoblade X, which is not on Switch. So, yeah. Anyway, I was going to do was
thank you once again.
I was going to read the comments, some of the comments from this hour-long video, and then we'll switch over to the next video we need to watch.
In who people might want to see as newcomers in Smash Ultimate. This is, I think, exactly what's going on here, which means that yes.
Let me pause. Okay.
Well, it's probably
nope. Jesus Christ. Okay. Comments. So we've been calling Fiora 7 for over a decade. I'm surprised we had to be outright told to figure Lucky 7 out. Yeah. I have them in a box downstairs, and you should play them. They're really well worth it. In fact, in my humble opinion, there's a lot to love about all the Xenoblade games individually, but I think Xenoblade 1 is my favorite overall. But Xenoblade 2 is really good still. It just took me a while to get into it. But that's probably because I started with Xenoblade 2, and it was really rough getting into it. But eventually I put it down, played Xenoblade 1 all the way, and then finished Xenoblade 2. And then I ended up loving Xenoblade 2 a lot. So I recommend you do that. Anyway, this is because it was always a silly fan name, and people have actively been lobbying in the community to throw it out by now, and I am keeping it. It stays trivia in the German wiki I am cooking up privately. Okay. Oh yeah, these are the replies. So, Ricky called Fiora 7 to protect the main cast from spoilers. I made enemies more comically evil because that's closest to reality. Is a golden statement, and just one of the many reasons why. Really said people IRL are more evil than anything I could imagine. But I still think, yeah, I agree, it's still kind of boring. Setting the Riku lie counter to infinity, then immediately setting the previously not accessible lie counter equal to the Riku, yeah. Well, apparently, just having married Numa twice, not just a mecha, now also confirms something that had been debated on the Xenoblade Wiki, which is obvious, yeah. the races of Xenoblade 1 and 2 exist in Xenoblade 3, even if its residents don't acknowledge it. Seriously had good arguments on the board and the wiki. Yeah, some people are really stupid about. I can't believe the wiki even was debating this. Like, if the race, it hasn't been confirmed. They have the traits. If Mallow comes back as a permanent party member, I would freak out. That would be cool. Let's see. Noah's katana is called Lucky 7. He's wielding Dumbman using Dumbman's fighting style. The fact that so much. Okay, so yeah, lots of good stuff. I could totally spend time reading comments like a lot, but we have more videos to get through. So this is the next video we should watch. More new secrets of Xenoblade 3 featuring Xenosaga. Before that, though, let me refresh. So you can see my stream. We can do it Inception again. Anyway, okay, there we go. So now we have 4 videos to watch. Let's watch this one.
Hello to all my Xenoblade chroniclers out there. It is me, Tyrea Wife Guy, back again with another burtastic video.
Tyrea Wife
We're doing
Guy.
something a little bit different this month, and by that I mean I'm going to try and upload 4 videos during it. 1 on each of the first 4 Fridays. There's a good chance I'm going to do this. Every video after this one is going to go under the new category of Patreon subscribers and YouTube members, getting them at least a week early before they go out publicly. And there's only one potential issue with this. That being the 4th of the videos, which will be coming out on the 24th of May. Simply because I will be at MomoCon that weekend, and I don't know if I will have the time or opportunity to make a video public and ensure everything goes.
You know what would be a really good video idea is to search the comment section to see if you can find one of your friends' comments. What? What do you mean? You mean like I don't get what you... You mean like my own comments? If so, I only have one real life friend, Isaac, and I know when he comments. I don't know if you're referring to that or looking at random videos to see if... Again, I don't know.
With that, so that might be delayed until the Tuesday, but the video will still be done long before then. Also, if you are at said MomoCon, you will have a chance to meet me and a bunch of other Xenoblade creators who will be there. Anyway, moving on to the main topic of this video. This is part 2 of the 3-parter about the Xenoblade 3 Ionios Moments art book. The first part was about the initial stuff from the big lore interview. This second part will be updates to that and just kind of more general
random videos, yeah. Well, I guess that's not a bad idea, but at the same time, I only have like one friend, unless I count you guys. Try to find your comments, Caroline, in other videos. But even then, I'm not sure exactly how that video will work, but I guess that's a decent idea.
The third part will be about the new pieces of art itself. This video is going to be relatively shorter, and half of it is going to be a new Xenosaga connection theory, actually. And the third one is going to be longer, but not necessarily as long as the 90-minute video that I made about the special edition Xenoblade 3 art book, simply because a lot of art in Ionios Moments is reprinted from there, and a lot of the interesting content in the new book is actually in commentary that is currently only in Japanese, so yeah. I'm going to want to wait for a full fan translation of the book
still waiting
before making an entire comprehensive video about all the stuff in here that we don't yet know. That being said,
I can't believe I listened to you guys to wait till everything is translated.
So while the Xenosaga stuff will have a second spoiler warning when we get there, this video will contain spoilers for the entire numbered Xenoblade Chronicles trilogy. Before we really get started though, 2 small pieces of good news. The first is that the Xenosaga album Kickstarter has ended and was a massive success. When I last discussed it, it had already been fully funded, but was 2 stretch goals away from everything being done, and those were both blown past by the time the campaign ended. So not only will the album also include a handful of new jazz arrangements, it will be recorded in higher quality, and there will eventually be a physical concert in France at some point in the future. So that's all great. I'm glad this got off the ground. Xenosaga is good, and I hope more people will get to play it soon. Secondly, the Xenoblade 3 art book, which the rest of this video is about, has already been announced to have a second print run. It apparently has sold extremely well. I don't know the details on the Xenoblade 2 one and when that got its additional printings and stuff like that. But considering this happened within like a week of it coming out, I'd say that's a pretty good sign. It's everywhere in Japan. I've seen pictures of it stacked on multiple different shelves right next to gacha game art books from franchises that definitely bring in more money than Xenoblade, and is surprisingly cheap for its page count to get shipped elsewhere in the world. That being said, this is just a second printing of the existing Japanese version of the book, which means whenever this comes out, it will still be only officially available in one of the 8 languages, counting Chinese only once, that the actual Xenoblade 3 game was available in on its release date 2 years ago, so it's not great, especially because even the ebook can't be bought from certain regions. So really, if they're gonna translate the game into a lot of languages, they should probably also translate the art book that has important lore.
Yeah, I wish they would, in my opinion. If I were to spend, speed through the lore of Xenoblade, would I still enjoy playing it? Let me guess, you have no idea how to answer this question. I mean, it depends a lot on the gameplay, especially, or for like a while, I liked the gameplay in all the Xenoblade games, but for a while I just thought it was fine, nothing that special. So, but I know lots of people that really get into the gameplay, so you might actually if you just speed run through the lore. First of all, even if you speed run through the lore of Xenoblade, there's stuff you'll probably miss because, for example, there's cutscenes that are not cutscenes. They're not voice acted, and so lots of people. So if you watch for example, this is one of the key things I see. If you put out Xenoblade 2, the movie, where lots of people that just take the cutscenes from the games and then they just combine them all into a really long video, 12 hours long. You could do that, but you'll probably miss a couple of information from the game itself, from dialogue, from side quests or other details, so you'll get most of the gist of the lore, but you won't get the finer details. So it might be better to experience the game for the final details, but you will get a better understanding if you speed run the lore, I guess, and I think you'll still have fun playing the game, again, especially depending on if you like the gameplay, which some people, again, really, really do get into more than others, which I have actually gotten more into it, and actually like the gameplay more, especially for Xenoblade 2 and 3. Xenoblade 1, it's fun. That was actually my favorite gameplay style for a while, but now I see it was kind of slightly basic, but yeah. Anyway, long story short, you'll probably still, what was the question exactly? You will probably enjoy playing it if you, speedrun the lore, but I still recommend you to maybe, look at play the games to understand the lore, so. Can I have your credit
not available
card?
Anywhere else.
Start with Xenoblade. If anyone does actually want to start with any of the Xenoblade games, start with Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition on the Switch. Play 1. This is my recommendation as someone who kind of started with 2 and did not enjoy Xenoblade for a while. Start with 1, then move on to Future Connected, which is the epilogue thing. It's after you beat technically you don't have to even beat the main game, but it's in the menu thing of Xenoblade 1. It's the epilogue for Xenoblade 1. If that anyway. Xenoblade 1, Future Connected, then move on to Xenoblade 2, Torna, which is a prequel to Xenoblade 1, but in some ways I think it's maybe better to play it after. And then go to Xenoblade 3 and then Future Redeemed. Future Redeemed is especially... you can technically, you can technically start off with Xenoblade 2 or even Xenoblade 3, but, 1, I did not enjoy playing Xenoblade 2 at first, and I only enjoyed it when I finished Xenoblade 1, and Xenoblade 3 has a lot more stuff, especially in its DLC, where I feel you need to play the other games, so, yeah.
Some of those.
But the good thing is they're all available on Switch, so
it's a ha-ha funny when we're talking about the games with other fans that yes, every single entry in the series has some very important information locked behind the Japanese language, but that should not be the case anymore in current year.
I agree.
It is not acceptable. Either put it all in the game or translate every piece of important supplemental material. Next up, a few things that should actually be changed in the second printing of the book, because in the one that exists now, they are incorrect. First off, the header pages for most of the chapters have some of the in-game chibis on them, and Gray's is wrong. In his
How?
chibi and character model of the actual game, Gray's eye patch is on his right eye, and this is consistent. However, a while ago, I believe it was in the update Ino was added, his chibi was mistakenly swapped to one where his left eye was covered. This was reverted back in the actual game, but the wrong version is what's used on the world design chapter header page in the art book.
Oh, that's
This
so
is especially
mad.
unfortunate because this
I'm
is
so
the
mad.
highest resolution any of these chibis are officially available in. The ebook pages are higher res than both the sprites in the original game and I believe the NSO profile pictures, so yeah, the accurate Gray chibi is just not officially available in the same resolution as all the other ones.
The eye patch is not on the wrong side.
Monica's chibi
If you understand that
uses
reference.
the eye patch version instead of the no eye patch version, which is probably the one you'll have for more of the game, so that's also kind of weird. I kind of understand how this happened because Gray's concept art is
Wait, what
also
about the iPads exactly? Okay.
version instead of the no eye patch
Oh, Project Next is playing Game
officially
Boy.
available in the same resolution as all the other ones. Additionally, on a later chapter page, Monica's chibi shows up, and that uses the eye patch version instead of the no eye patch version, which is probably the one you'll have for more of the game, so that's also kind of weird. I kind of understand how this happened because Gray's concept art is also in the book, and most of it does show the eye patch on his left eye. Like, there had to be a reason there existed a chibi of him with the eye patch on the other eye in the game's files in the first place, and this is why. So, yeah, I get why they took that one by mistake, but also, the finished version of his art is in the book as well. It is the only piece of art on the page it appears on, so I'm not sure what happened here. This
At the
is
same
kind of thing
time,
that
it's only an
definitely
eye
should have
patch
been
on the
caught
wrong
in editing,
side.
but just wasn't for some reason. And that is also the case for the second major error. If you pay attention to Future Doomed, it is very obvious that Glimmer and Nikal are both in their 9th term. Both of their term markers are clearly shown and are identical to Mio's from the base game. And part of Glimmer's initial motivation even revolves around the fact that she was very close to homecoming before she was freed from the cycle.
Oh yeah, this was a common
both
mistake.
of their ages listed as 18 instead of 19
Yeah, that
in the
makes
art
no
book.
sense.
To exacerbate this, for characters who are soldiers, the age line on their bio actually reads number kanji for years old, and then in parentheses, another number with the kanji for the term that's translated as term in English. So, yep, Glimmer and Nikal are listed as 18 years old and in their 9th term, despite neither of those being the case.
Yeah, that makes
This is
no
once
sense.
again an instance of something being chosen just by looking at the
Yeah,
concept.
because how terms work is one term is basically you are born into Xenoblade 3, the Xenoblade 3 Ionios world, as 10 years old, and then you're trained as child soldiers, and then when you hit 10 terms, you are 20 years old, and then that's when you die. So, yeah.
Art, and whoever edited this section must not have actually played the video game, because, yep, both Glimmer and Nikal do use the 9th term marker in their concept art for whatever reason. But again, play the game and you can very clearly tell they're supposed to be 10th terms. Like, another one of the chapter header pages uses all of the term markers instead of some of the chibis, so enough information to not get this wrong is present just by reading the book itself and then watching part of the ending of Future.
I want to rewind again, real quick.
Uses all of the term
Nope.
for whatever reason. But again, you must not have actually played the video game, because, yep, both Glimmer and Nikal do use the 9th term marker in their concept art for whatever reason. But again, play the game and you can very clearly tell they're supposed to be 10th terms. Like, another one of the chapter header pages uses all of the term markers instead of some of the chibis, so enough information to not get this wrong
I
is
gotta
present
rewind sometimes
just by reading the book itself and then
to
watching
make sure I
part
catch
of
everything.
the ending of Future Redeemed. And to make things worse, the art book doesn't even have every canon age from the game. Despite what happens to them in the story, Shania and Guernica both appear on the affinity chart and both have canon ages. and yet both of their ages are completely absent from their character bios for zero reason whatsoever. Shania, you do actually have to look in the affinity chart to find, but Guernica directly states his age in Chapter 1, so I really don't know how any of this slipped through. Those mistakes have me annoyed at Katakawa, the company who actually put the art book together, because I'm able to notice something is wrong with the Nicole and Glimmer pages without really being able to read any Japanese besides some katakana, and this book apparently had editors who were supposed to catch things like that, but there's also one age-related thing that has me annoyed at Monolith Soft. Ooh. Every main character from Future Redeemed, besides those two, whose ages are wrong, remember, has their age listed as question mark. For most of them, this makes sense. A is very obvious. It would be unnecessary detail, really, to have an exact timeline down to
1263
when the processors were made, then when Klaus's experiment took place, then exactly how many years in Pocket Dimension and out of Pocket Dimension the Xenoblade 1 world lasted for. So, yeah, I get it. That is more a hassle for Monolith to actually keep track of than it would be to just hand-wave that part. Otos, especially out of the Trinity, is just never going to have an exact age, because that's the one that had the same consciousness effectively going on for the entire time. It's not worth it to have an actual age for that. Mm-hmm. Riku shows up in the main game section as well, and his age is question mark. Every Noppon's age is question mark. That's fine. Shulk and Rex, I would have liked to know how old they were, because that would nail down exactly how long it's been in between the ending of Xenoblade 1 and 2 and when Ionios happened. But it seems like they want to keep their cards a bit closer to their chest when it comes to stuff like that, just because this continuity is going to be picked up soon, and it seems like they're tying the exact ending of Ionios into future events and aren't going to time skip past that. So I understand why they might either want to hold that back for a reveal or some tidbits in a later game, or just haven't nailed down the timeline exactly, so they don't want to completely show their hand before they're entirely sure what the next project's going to be. The things that do annoy me, though, are Matthew and Niall. There was no reason for Monolith to not even make up ages for those two and then give them to Katakawa to publish in the art book, because there is no reason why we shouldn't know their ages, really. All we know is that they're probably both in their 20s, because Matthew is a couple years older than Niall, and it seems like they were both too old to have been soldiers in the Flame Clock system. But beyond that, we are not going to see these versions of the characters anymore. Every Flame Clock soldier and every member of the city is going to be reincarnated in some way when they get reborn in the old world. All of the soldiers already have incarnations in the old world that are completely different from any of their Flame Clock versions, and those are going to take precedent. They'll probably have lingering memories from the other lives, but they're going to be back in their original body, or recreation of their original body. Shut up, I don't care about semantics like that. We don't need to ship a Theseus Noah.
Okay, I am back. Okay, I am back. But I have to do the freaking disses. This is so annoying, but after that I can play. Okay. You're gonna play with Caroline, Splatoon? Are you guys gonna play Splatoon? Or is your Switch still dead?
And that's just a different version of the character. While people like Shulk, Rex, and Riku are just going back to their original bodies because their original bodies were the ones in
Xenoblade character, dramatic Splatoon characters, Marie, only chill, Splatoon is
in Ionios. It makes sense for the characters who are going to exist outside Ionios exactly how they did within it to have their ages obfuscated for the case of not wanting to deal with the title. But just like the soldiers, the citizens are going to be in different incarnations when they're born into the new world. They might not even look the same. All the soldiers are still going to be genetically identical because they were cloned off of the people from the original worlds. But it is very possible that the souls of the people of the city will be incarnated into brand new bodies. So this is the last time we're going to see these versions of Matthew and Niall. Even if they have the exact same bodies, if and when we see them again, there's still going to be different incarnations of the characters. So it would have been nice to just give some sort of time frame for any of this, because that would help us figure out why the second city was founded when the first city was destroyed and all that stuff. But I don't know. I would have liked to have more information in this book, but I guess we can't have nice things all the time. Moving on to our next segment, it is blue text time, as the translations provided by Lugal Banda at the Xenomira WordPress blog that I used in the last video were outdated by the time that video publicly released, as he added a few addendums to clarify other points or translate a few things that people wanted to know about. And, well, I'm going to cover them now a month later just because I didn't do it before.
Yeah.
The first thing is that A is referred to as a woman in the bio section of A's concept art. And this is not just like a wacky fan translation getting something wrong or that kind of thing. Multiple translators have confirmed this. I looked up the exact kanji used in that sentence, and that is what is stated there. Okay. We already knew A was a more feminine presenting version of Ontos. This doesn't really change anything. Does not eliminate the existence of the Rex conversation or how A is referred to without using pronouns in the English version, or being addressed in gender neutral ways in the original Japanese and using a masculine personal pronoun, the same one Alvis used even. So, yeah, this doesn't really change anything.
And lots of people are mad about it because they're like, oh, he confirms that A is non-binary, they, them, or whatever. But, I mean, you could just view it as how most non-binary people are. They're born, like, A was born as a female, but they are meant to be literally in the middle because, you know, it just makes more sense that, like, A was born as a female, but like chooses those pronouns because it's technically they them is what the Alvis Ontos is meant to be in the middle between Numo, which is the female one, and then Malos, which is the male one. Anyway, okay, I can now play.
How you refer to A and talk about A in any other context, so it's just a thing that is there now. The one thing about this sentence that I will always be salty about, though, is how it had the potential to be so
really?
Based
Stop
on machine
banned.
translation, the sentence just says something like, A is a woman who wields a sword called the Monado, or something along those lines. Basically, it says A is a woman and also A has a Monado. The initial, very inaccurate machine translation of this I read said, A is a woman whose sex is Monado, which goes infinitely harder than any official description of A or the gender identities of any of the Trinity processors ever could. And I'm so disappointed that something like that will never be official. As a bit of a tangent, also kind of regarding A, I think a fun way to go about the fact that Ontos is capable of changing appearance and presentation entirely in between incarnations, and almost certainly had done so prior to Alvis existing, because the High Ante had a line of seers.
Yeah.
I doubt it was all just the Alvis body the entire time. A probably isn't even the first time Ontos looked exactly like that. If Ontos is going to keep showing up again, as awesome as A is, they don't have to be A the entire time. Why don't we just notice the fact that Xenoblade is dubbed by British people and turn Ontos into the Doctor? Different appearance following the same design aesthetic each time, different voice actor, subtly different personality and role in the story. None of the other characters who do Alvis or A or some combination of the two would question it because they know the character's capable of doing that. I don't know. Seems like kind of a no-brainer and a fun way to explore a character that has just completely changed in appearance dozens of times throughout their life. And I don't know.
That would be kind of
British
cool.
people exist. That being said, assuming this isn't another editing fail on Kanekawa's part, this actually makes something very interesting in the world of theory crafting. My initial interpretation of Ontos being split into A and Alpha was that A is Ontos in its entirety, while Alpha is more so a shell influenced by Klaus stuff and Shulk's Last Wish. And that the reason for the design change was to contrast with Alpha by being significantly more feminine in appearance to make it obvious, okay, this is the good one and this is the bad one. And also simply because the whole Alpha having two wings and then keeping one after being split and A getting the other one is very thematically relevant when it comes to the animus and anima concepts that go into Ouroboros, as well as being a massive Xenogears homage. Thinking about how I was going to discuss this little sentence in this video, though, led me down a completely different interpretation of things. Remember the way Rex describes Ontos' gender. It isn't neither male nor female. It is somewhere in between male and female, which means Ontos isn't removed from the concept of gender entirely, but has specific masculine and feminine parts. And if true Ouroboros awakening comes from a male character and a female character interlinking, and Gondor used Ouroboros' power to split Ontos into a masculine and a feminine half, what if it is actually that? The masculine part of Ontos went into Alpha, and the feminine part of Ontos kept all the memories Alphys made from Xenoblade 1 and went into A. Put a pin in that. We're going to get back into that later when we're talking about
There's
Xenoblade.
a lot to think about.
Next blue bullet point. A caption credited to an unnamed Monolith Soft employee. This is another frustration I have with Monolith on the art book. Basically, only Saito, Choco, and Paulo, who designed Eno and Alpha's final form, actually have their names credited. None of Monolith Soft's in-house artists' names are credited.
Which
so
is a bit
read
disappointing.
the credits of the game and see the names of people who worked on it. It would be nice to know who designed each character credited to Monolith Soft and who had this commentary. Anyway, though, this caption is next to the concept art of the radio from Future Redeemed.
Oh, yeah.
Part of it, the relevant part to all this discussion, is, in addition, the design for the radio uses a certain something for its motif. If you zoom in, you can in fact see the Vector Industries logo on the concept art for the radio. However, it is just low res enough where you can't actually make out the word Vector on it, so this might just be how they got around the Xenosaga copyright, which is extremely funny. While they're also a bit too blurry to tell exactly, it does look like the first number on the radio's dial is 98 and the last one is 22, so it seems like even in the concept art stage, it was a very intentional point to make every single number on the radio equivalent to the year each mainline Xeno game released.
Yeah.
Next up, Takahashi has some words about contextualizing the trilogy that Luca Banda missed on his initial read. This is what he has to say. Xenoblade 3. It's what has continued in the Xenoblade series from 1 to 2 and then to 3. The story of Xenoblade, in parentheses 1, 2, 3, so he's again excluding X explicitly from this trilogy, is, at the end of the day, really a story about a man named Klaus who became the catalyst. The idea of Klaus becoming the catalyst for the entire story is obviously what we've seen play out on screen over the past 14 years, but also is very similar to the concept of the contact from Xenogears, which is very carrying on. That was one story that had always been there, and so in that sense, the end of that can be said to be a culmination. However, how do I say this? During the creation of games, I'm personally already thinking about what comes next, so it's more of a passing point, not a culmination. When you phrase it as a culmination, it gives an impression of giving it your all, etc., but in that sense it's slightly different, because I personally already moved on to the next step. Looking at it from a different vantage point, considering the know-how that Monolith Soft has gained, the growth of each individual person, and including how the games, are being created, and how we worked hard on it, I suppose in that sense it is a culmination. So, yeah, this is basically Takahashi going out and stating what I had assumed he was implying by 3 being a culmination, as soon as we got hints about what was coming next. 3 is the end of Klaus's story,
Yeah.
and at the end of Future Redeemed, we saw that the experiment was explicitly undone, and while 3 was also a thematic and, in some ways, gameplay culmination, it is not the ending of the series, it is just an ending of part of the series. Despite being the one who coined the term, I kind of grew apprehensive about calling things the Klaus Saga, because it seems like it's more unnecessary spoilers than the Experiment Saga or something along that line. But
I still like the
seeing as
Klaus
how
Saga.
Takahashi here centers it specifically on Klaus and his actions and their consequences as opposed to the experiment itself, makes me think that I was right the whole time and Klaus Saga is an appropriate thing to call it. Next bullet point, following up on the last one. After the above quote, he goes on to say the original idea was for there to be an entire town on each of the Furnaces, but this was changed out of consideration for time, budget, and manpower. As insane as Takahashi gets sometimes, it is good to know that he is actually learning how to keep his ambition in check. Obviously, that happened with Xenoblade 1, and that's how we got a Xenoblade series in the first place. But it goes to show that, yeah, the know-how Monolith Soft has gained, the growth of individual people, and how the games are being created, that is also improving in addition to the style of game design and innovation and stuff like that. They're intentionally not going out of their way to go all out. They are holding back on what they could try to do because they know it probably wouldn't work as well than what they actually chose to go with, even if it's diminished from the original vision. This is why concept art always looks cooler than the final game. It is very difficult on hardware, especially console, to make things look like
Just like the
they do
Switch.
in a very creative artist's imagination. This is even something I talked about in the original art book video. There is a lot of concept art of Ferrandises being bigger or having bigger settlements around them. And I brought this up as a possibility, so it's really neat to know that, yeah, that was the exact thought process. In universe, they're probably bigger and have entire towns and stuff like that, but this was a necessary concession to have it working on the Switch. The last bullet point from this is going back into the section about different people being different objects in Ionis. This is something I talked about in the last video, but it's good to have an actual translation this time. I'm going to read the entire previous quote because this follows from that. Ko Kojima, one of the game's directors, asks Takahashi, Noah threw Lucky 7 into the ocean at the end of the game. Was that okay? Takahashi responds as follows. This conversation, how do I put this? It deals with the fundamental aspect of Origin. Origin and Ionians. You can think of it broadly as a virtual world. Think of it like a server in a virtual world. It actually isn't that, but this will be fine for demonstration purposes. And within that, there's source code that's running. And as a way to express that, it can take the form of a sword, but also not. And Alvis was responsible for the general management of Origin's systems. As the administrator, Alvis was quietly watching for a while, after Origin started up. As this was happening, Zed, a partial administrator and collective conscious-like entity, starts doing things on its own. The story of Future Redeemed starts with Alvis deems this unacceptable. Many things happen after that, but Alvis, note who he's talking about is specifically not named, but I assume Alvis was specifically A, ends up siding with Shulkin Company, so there was no longer a general admin. And so Zed replaced that position, and that's why Zed can mess with the source code, making the human lifespan 10 years and observing it because it's amusing and things like that, although the whole 10-year lifespan thing was a change made to the code prior to Future Redeemed. Basically, you can do a lot of things. He can be brazen about it. When thinking about what can be done to break that source code, this is where you use external powers. I believe this was stated in the story, but a kind of power that exists outside the flow will be necessary. In regards to what that would be, it can be the power of the will of young people living in the world, and regardless of Numa or Logos, it's the same kind of entity as Alvis, and thus an external factor from Zed's point of view. Therefore, combining these powers and retaking the world for ourselves, that would be the broad explanation of Origin-related things. And the new bullet point, since there is great interest in it, I will also translate what follows the quote above. You had to collect Origin shards at the end of the main story, right? There's nothing concretely decided in terms of who is what shard, but you never know. Maybe those shards could be Ryan. In broad strokes, if you think about it in this way, it shouldn't be wrong. Basically, most of the other important party members from Xenoblade 1 and 2 are probably housed within Origin metal shards that do provide use to the main party at some point during the story. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say about that. I mean, maybe the Ouroboros stones also use Origin shards that are tied to specific characters, and that could be a whole other thing. To be honest,
I don't know why Luxin had to read the
maybe
whole
there's
thing.
Origin metal in the Cloud Keep, and that's what happened to Dromar. Is the Dromar head in the Cloud Keep the actual Dromar? I don't know. Not really much else to say.
Longer than...
In addition to Lugobanda, Nintendo Everything has also been translating snippets of the art book interview, and they did cover one passage that Lugobanda did not. So that will also be linked in the description, and I'm going to talk about this here, because it's talking about character expressions. I don't know for what part of this interview it is. I don't know who's talking here, but this is what they have.
Guys, let me turn on the light here real quick. So hang on a sec. Okay. Oh my god. Sorry about that. Needed to go to the bathroom and turn on the light. So I don't know why my tablet light just turned on. Anyway. Let's continue watching, shall we? Yeah.
When we say we value expressions, we've always considered them to be important, and would like to treat them even more importantly in the future. That is to say, we touched upon video game grammar earlier, but there are scenes with mundane conversations,
it looks
right?
like it still looks good.
If it was a 3-minute conversation, one would get fed up with it. It was written in video game grammar. You might mash the button hoping you'd get to progress. However, when watching a live-action movie, Even if a scene is about 5 minutes long, as long as the actor's performances and chemistry work, even if there is no music or special effects, one would end up watching it all the same. The difference there might be the choice of words, or the power of the lines, but the most important part is the expressions. A lot of actors can speak using their eyes alone, and those things can fill a gap and prevent people from getting bored in live-action media. But for games, we can't reach that level of expressiveness yet. That's why we want to focus on this more in the future. As an extreme example, if we were to make a 10-minute long scene, we'd want to make something that can just stand on the verbal exchanges without music or effects, and that's the goal we were trying to aim for. This is just an example though, of course. We aren't trying to make an actual 10-minute scene,
But
so
you
don't
did.
misunderstand. Bullshit, you have done this before
Yeah, they
in
did.
every Xeno game. Getting back on topic.
They made a
But we're
10-minute
just looking
scene.
at the cutscenes for a game. Many have plenty of action scenes and flashy scenes, and there are many titles that I think would make for great reference material for future generations. But when it comes to people and people's exchange of words and emotions, there's a tendency toward their actions, while the showcasing of the silent parts are still mostly stuck in the realm of video game grammar. So I would like it if Monolith Soft could reach that first. It makes a lot of sense that this kind of focus on character acting in terms of animation in addition to voice performance is an important goal of Monolith, especially in a game like Xenoblade 3 that has a more somber and subdued tone for a lot of it.
Yeah.
It seems like this has been a priority of theirs for almost a decade. The original release of Xenoblade 1 obviously has some issues with being expressive because it's a Wii game,
Yeah.
and Xenoblade X's character models are often criticized for looking plasticky and uncanny. But starting with Xenoblade 2,
Yeah, they started to
made the
become
character
way more
designs
expensive.
very different from past games, intentionally so it could be more expressive. And then Definitive Edition, they reanimated
And
all
they
the
fixed
characters'
it. They
faces
made
throughout
Xenoblade
the
1
entirety
look
of
good.
Xenoblade 1 because they now had the technology to make them more expressive looking. And then Xenoblade 3 follows up on what both of those games did, being a culmination of 1 and 2 in yet another aspect, and also places a lot more emphasis on characters' eyes. That's something I always see praised about the animation in the game. So it's good to know that this is something they've been working towards the entire time. This is a culmination of years of training in the most literal of sense.
Man, so many
And
culminations.
they're getting a lot of
Xenoblade 3.
praise for something
Makes
that
me
they
love
put
it
a lot of
even
emphasis
more.
in work into. So
Than I
that's
already
great.
do, which is
It's
a
even
lot.
greater to know that we've got a lot of good things to look forward
Get back
to
from
because
eating
they're
nice,
clearly not
please.
fully satisfied with what they've done already. Alright, we are getting into the
We are in the
theory
second
portion of the
Luxin video
program.
now.
But first, I would like to mention one specific thing. I said that Malos represents the sun in the Trinity process. That is true. I also said that Malos, potentially coming back in a future Xenoblade game, would be a reference to the resurrection of Jesus, because Malos is technically the Jesus standing in Xenoblade 2. Now, that is only one possibility, obviously, and I knew that when I said that. I focused on that one because it was close to Easter, and I wanted to make a joke about it.
Mhm.
The other distinct possibility is that Malos seemingly dying in the Aegis War during Torna, then coming back for the main game, was instead the reference to the resurrection. And then he died at the end of Xenoblade 2 again. Then, his potential return after Ionios would instead be a reference to the second coming of Jesus. Seeing how the second coming tends to be tied into the final judgment of humanity and the end of days, I think we can bring in the Xenosaga spoilers because there's a lot to talk about here. First off, if the return of Malos equals second coming is true, that means something apocalyptic is likely coming around for the world yet again.
Oh,
And,
no.
well, yeah, we know that's happening. Because Xenosaga is being tied in now. An entire plot point in Xenosaga 3 was that stopping Wilhelm's plans would mean the world would eventually undergo
So, by the way,
heat
I'll pause real quick because Caroline asked us earlier about speedrunning the lore and if you would still enjoy the games. I think you can do that, which is what I did technically for Xenogears and Xenosaga. I speedran the lore. I have a basic understanding of it, not that much, you know, but like the broad strokes of like Xenogears and Xenosaga lore. But you know, I would still love to play the games to further get my information on the lore and I understand the context better, and also, you know, to actually play the games because unique gameplay systems.
And
so yeah,
the entire thing the characters are doing after the end of the game
it's
is
funny how the YouTube channel is talking about Splatoon. Oh, oh yeah. Well, that's because these guys. Well, I play a lot of Splatoon on the channel too. I play mostly a lot of I play a lot of Xenoblade, Splatoon, Mario, Zelda. Those are like my big franchises. Persona more recently. But yeah, we also play a lot of Splatoon. So yeah, and then yeah, they're talking. They don't understand that Xenoblade. They never played it. They only care about Splatoon, which is fine by me.
Trying to find a way to stop that. So yeah, all the apocalyptic stuff in the Xenoblade games only really had to do with the pocket dimensions, either the world of Xenoblade 1, All Rest, or Ionios. But now that they're combined back into Lost Jerusalem and reintegrated with the rest of the universe, there's potential universal scale destruction coming in the future. Granted, that will be for a few tens of thousands of years based on dialogue in Episode 3, but when compared to the age of the entire universe, that's not a whole lot of time to try and find a way to fix things. Chaos, the most knowledgeable character left in the series by the end of Episode 3, says that the key to fixing everything lies on Lost Jerusalem, on Earth. He, in some disembodied sense, and Cosmos' heavily damaged body, are floating in space very near to Earth. And a subset of the main cast, including Shion, is flying out towards it at the end of Episode 3. A very important thing Chaos says before all this goes down is that the key...
Only when Splatfest is on? Yeah. Only when Splatfest is on. I understand that. I mostly stream when there's only Splatfest or when there's challenges.
Saving the universe
the game
lies
so, yeah.
on Earth, on Lost Jerusalem, a planet he refers to as the land of origin.
Yeah.
It's also important to note that the Zohar and all of the Gnosis in the universe, they're basically the same thing as Mobius/Five Beasts, so that's kind of important probably, were brought to Lost Jerusalem when Cosmos and Chaos did their thing. That means that currently, on Earth, we have the casts of Xenoblade 1 and 2, Cosmos' body, which can easily be repaired by characters like Shulk and Tor, Chaos, in some way, and probably the Xenosaga version of the Zohar. So there's effectively one of those back, even though the conduit's gone. On the way there are several Xenosaga characters, including Shion, whose lineage has a very specific tie to the Zohar, and it's likely that she or a descendant of hers will need to make it there in order for important things to happen. Also, Junior will be coming, and
I'm not trying to
with the
take the
exception
whole
of maybe
chat.
Chaos, I think he might be the most
no
powerful
one is
character on the
here.
Xenosaga
No
side
problem.
left, because they don't have access
No
to the
problem,
Zohar
please.
anymore, and Cosmos will need to
Was
be
here.
rebuilt, so that might also mean something. I am not sure if anyone writing Xenosaga 3 actually knew what Chaos meant by the key to saving the universe when they did that. Maybe it was a bullet point in the drafts for later elements of the series that didn't come to be, or maybe the direction they had to take Xenosaga once it needed to be compressed to 3 games and then had to lose a lot of the intended content for those 3 games meant that that direction couldn't be carried out. But I believe that they are retconning Xenosaga, not even really retconning because they never explained it in the first place. They are retroactively deciding that that key is the completed Trinity processor, because with that, the Zohar and Shion, a descendant from the people of the Zohar who have higher communication abilities with it, is probably capable of doing something when all combined. Considering the conduit is probably Xenosaga's Zohar that got split off into 2 once All Rest became a separate universe from the rest of it, was able to send people into different universes, I'm betting Shion with a full Trinity processor is also capable of doing that, meaning a way for humanity to escape the collapse of the Xenosaga universe could be traveling to a different one. Perhaps taking ships that look like Abel's Ark to the beginning of space-time in a different universe. A process they could repeat ad infinitum, so a universe they're in never dies. And eventually they find one that will have its own humanity in planet Earth, becoming known as people called the Samarians. I don't know. It's a possibility. Anyway, though, the issue of...
it's sad that... What? You're back over here, nice son. Sad that the Wii U is gone. Yeah, it's sad that I mean, it's especially sad that Xenoblade X is still trapped on there. Which, just what I wish would happen. I wish, there's probably, because of Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed, there's probably going to be Xenosaga, maybe Xenogear stuff coming up for the Switch or Switch 2, like ports, remasters, whatever. But I would love for them to go back to Xenoblade X port it. I think it is going to get eventually a port or remake or remaster, whatever, for like the 10th anniversary, which is coming up really close. Xenoblade X came out in 2015. It's 2024, so I think they're going to do something for the 10-year anniversary like they did for Xenoblade 1. But anyway, I would love for them to, after that, they go into make Xenoblade X2, Xenoblade X3, you know. I would love that. But I don't know if they'll ever go back to... Besides, I think they will do a remake, remaster, whatever, of Xenoblade X, but I don't know if they'll ever go back to, like, continuing that sub-series of Xenoblade. I would love that, but... I'm glad they remastered the game for Wii U. What game? They never remastered the game on Wii... What do you mean? You mean Xeno... What? They never did. Xenoblade X is not on Switch. Do you mean the original Xenoblade? That was on the original Wii, which was a great remaster on Switch.
Rises in the fact that we might not actually have the complete Trinity processor right now. Numa, we're almost certainly fine. While Glimmer's core crystal is vestigial, both Pyra and Mithra are there. No big deal. Malos is still around in Ionios, meaning there's got to be a way to pull him back into existence, so we have Logos again. What about Ontos? What exactly happened when Alpha died? Because Alpha and A split off from the same being. Did A reabsorb Alpha? Is A actually the complete Ontos anymore?
Mm-hmm.
It's like I was saying before.
You mean
it's time to grab that pin back.
Well.
If A is specifically the feminine part of Ontos, plus Alvis's memories and personality, and Alpha is the masculine part of Ontos, plus Klaus and Schultz's wish influence, did A reabsorb the masculine part of Ontos and become the complete Ontos again? Or did Alpha just completely fade out of existence, and we've now only got a partial Ontos that can't form the entire Trinity, even if Malos is brought back and Pyra and Mithra are holding hands and channeling their power together? So
I don't know if that would matter.
where are we supposed to get the male half of an Ontos from? Well,
split them up again.
You know how I said Cosmos isn't the only Xenosaga character who's in close proximity to Earth at the end when we see Cosmos being a blue meteor, aka right after the ending of Ionios? Chaos is there as well. Not only was Chaos's design the basis for Alvis and Elma's designs, but he is also the embodiment of the power of Anima. Basically one half of a failsafe for the universe. And he is specifically the male-aligned part, as contrasted with the power of Animus, which is female-aligned. So, yeah.
So he could
if
be
we
a
have
substitute?
Ontos who potentially can't use the Ontos power
My brain
because
hurts.
they are missing
Even
the
I
male
am starting
part
to
of
get
the
like
Ontos
my
process.
brain hurts from this lore.
And then crashing down on Earth, we've got a blue-haired robot girl who's going to get repaired by Shulk. I'm going to say hopefully Riku, not Tora, actually, now that I think about it. As well as the disembodied voice of the original mysterious white-haired twink in the series, both shouting about how you should try and find and then fire up the Trinity processor, because our buddy Shion's coming soon, and if she's not able to use it, we're all going to die. And then A's like, yo, I can't Ontos right now. And then Chaos is like, wait a minute, you're the female part of Ontos, I'm the male part of the universe's failsafe mechanism. What if we just combine, and we don't have to run into the issue of Alvis and Chaos looking almost identical, because they'll be the same character, and then that reforms the complete Ontos. They revive Malos somehow, and then you already got Numa, there's your entire Trinity processor, boom, Shion or her descendant lands, hey, there we go, she can now interface with the Zohar and the Trinity processor to either fix the universe or have everyone jump through a Rick and Morty portal with Xenoblade X on the other side, and that's how that stuff happens.
Oh, that's how Xenoblade X connects everything.
Not even reaching anymore. This is a reasonable extrapolation from what the games have directly told us. You will see in 5 years. Until next time, though, which will be next week and not 5 years from now, this is Luxin, signing out.
Okay, nope, don't. I don't want it. Okay. So even myself, I'm like, okay, that's starting to become a lot of, like, I understand what Luxin was saying, but man, even I was like, my brain is hurting.
Glad this got off the ground. Xenosaga is good, and I hope more people will get to play it.
Let me just rewind a little bit, and then we'll check the comments.
This is wrong. in his chibi and character model in the actual game. Gray's
So, like, intro, then Xenosaga here.
Saga connection here, actually. And the third one is going to be longer, but not necessarily as long as the 90-minute video. The Xenoblade 3 art book, which the rest of this video is about, has already been announced to have a second print.
I don't know why that's labeled as Xenosaga. Like, some of these things don't exactly make sense. I don't know if he came up with them, like Luxin, or if it was a YouTube automated thing. Timestamps.
This is a reasonable extrapolation.
Anyway, let's look at the comments, some of them at least. Luxin being able to make a 4-minute video on like 10 pages of content never fails to baffle me. I agree. Interesting 40-minute video. A is a woman whose sex is the Monado. Oh, come on, that would have gone, if like it would load, that would have gone so hard. Okay, jeez. The best thing I heard from the art book. Yeah. Come on. You don't need the sip of Theseus, Noah. Oh my god. I remember in an older video you talked about the concept of bringing in Xenosaga to the Xenoblade universe as part of Xenoblade 3. It's pretty I don't know how you say that. To see something like that unfolding out with the connections hinted, I generally hope is willing. I hope they bring in, you know, freaking Xenogears. Like, come on. Also, yes, this is literally what Rex described in the cutscene. Why do you look like that? Rex chimes in and says Antos was somewhere in between the middle, between male and female, split the masculine, so... I still like the comment. I like liking comments, by the way. Why didn't you get all goals so we could... we weren't talking to you. I think actually had Juju in it, and that's why Noah yeeted him off. At the end of Xenoblade 3, Noah is metaphorically, possibly literally, the avatar of the United Trinity processor. It was, yeah, Numa, gameplay-wise, are the only talent arts for their own. Oh my god, so much. As a thing for split dual wield swords, like how I had a great mistranslation as well before Google. I was happily to be Okay, wait. My main thing is if Xenoblade or Xenosaga takes place after the world's refuse at the end of 3, why was mentioned in the radio in Klaus's era, which was way before? The Xenoblade 3 and Xenoblade X, oh god, Jesus Christ. So many 3s, X's, okay. Xenosaga 3 and Xenoblade 3's ending happening at the same time, kind of like 1 and 2's, yeah. Isn't the same guy as the one. Instead, it's a new and onward will use saga elements and characters, but in a new way, although not the same. During the time frame where Earth became, it would have started during Klaus's era. Originally was introduced as Junior's generic or genetic dad who is somehow able to take over his body. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know a bit, but I don't know the details of Xenosaga lore, so I can't really comment much, you know, because that is a blind spot that I'm hoping, you know, with a remaster, remake, port, whatever, that they will get to. Anyways, this might, we are 2 hours in. We may be able to get through the rest of these videos, but I'm not sure. We may only have time for this hour-long video. We may only have time for this hour-long video, and we might not have time to do these two. Which is a shame because I'm especially interested in this one, properly comparing Xenoblade 2's and 3's DLC. Can I join y'all playing Splatoon? Yeah, you could join them. Can you... you probably have to type in a room code or friend them on Switch, so... You guys could drop the numbers on the chat, so... Anyway, like I was saying, I'm interested in what Luxin says because, yes, Xenoblade 2's and 3's DLC is weird because I think overall, you might argue Xenoblade 2's DLC is better than Xenoblade 3's, but Xenoblade 3's DLC gave us Future Redeemed, which is amazing, and that I think that's way better than Torna. This is a hot take, but I actually I like Torna, the Golden Country, but I didn't love it. You know, lots of people loved it. I'm not one of those people. I like it pretty good enough, but I actually, strangely enough, like Future Connected more than Torna. But anyway, but the rest of the stuff for Xenoblade 2's was really good, like the DLC. But Xenoblade 3's rest of the DLC was kind of lacking, but the main thing, the story thing, was, oh my god. Like 10 out of 10, would play again, you know. I need your friend code. What should the pool be called? The Cool Kids is the pool code. Yeah, Cool Kids. Okay. So, let's play mix. Let's go. So let's continue on with what may be the last video. I'm not sure. This may be the last video we react to. The art of Xenoblade Chronicles.
You know, it would be kind of awkward if people are really getting tired of everyone talking about the Ionios Moments art book by now. I haven't released the last video before I started recording this one, so I don't know what the reception for that is. Based on when they're supposed to come out, like, I'm gonna have to be finished with this one the same day that one goes to the public, so, you know, that's gonna be fun. We're talking about the actual art in the art book this time. So I hope you're ready for that, and ready for this being a lot more of a PowerPoint than the...
You guys haven't seen the comment. You haven't seen the thing appear, right? Like the low battery thing, just like the first time for the controller. Unless that was not my controller. Wait a minute. Was that not my controller? That might have actually been Luxin's controller. I know one time there was a video where he, like, I think it was during the Xenoblade 3, like, Future Redeemed cutscene with, the radio scene around there. I think that popped up. That was the one where it popped up the low battery thing. So did it happen again with Luxin and it wasn't my controller? Was it not me? Was I just worried about my controller for nothing?
The last few art book videos...
Because I haven't seen it appear besides that time.
We're just talking about the images, and there's not really a lot of text to talk about, so it's going to primarily be that, and not even gameplay or cutscenes. Also, as this is a Xenoblade 3 thing, this video will contain...
Wait, what? Let's continue on Splatoon, the next video. I heard that. Wait, what? What?
Spoilers for the entire numbered Xenoblade Chronicles trilogy. It will not cover spoilers for Xenosaga, besides the Xenosaga references in the main game in Future Redeemed. I'm going to mention that they are references if they come up, but I'm not going to talk about any connections or actually spoil the plot of Saga. I apologize if this ends up getting annoying, but I do intend on mentioning the page number for every single piece of artwork I talk about, so if you have your own physical book in front of you, you can look at that instead of video.
Well, let me just get my art book real quick. Oh, wait.
A better experience, not just because of YouTube compression, but because the images I'm using aren't particularly high resolution either. I'm also going to be skipping over a lot of content in this book. A big percentage of the art in Ionios Moments is reprinted from the art book that came with the collector's edition of the base game of Xenoblade 3, and I've already talked about a lot of that art in detail, so if you like analysis of that art,
cooperation in the chat.
That. I will also not be talking about any of the text in this book whatsoever. As
this was a crazy moment in Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed, by the way.
I'm not going to give you translations by someone I don't know to be reputable or through machine translation, and I'd like to wait and make a comprehensive video once a full fan translation of the book is finished. There are good and reputable fan and journalistic translations of some of the text from the important lore conversation at the end of the book, and I have 2 videos primarily going over that stuff. I will allude to things the developers said in that, but beyond that, we're just talking about images unless the text is something I myself can read with my very rudimentary katakana knowledge. Anyway, with
imagine having even some basic knowledge of Japanese.
Beginning of the video
What a loser.
out of the way, let's get started talking about art. Dust Jacket, Noah and Mio about to kiss. Actual front cover underneath the Dust Jacket. Noah and Mio in sepia tones, actually kissing. This is an adaptation of something that happens in the video game. I do not have any specific big analysis about this stuff, other than it is very cute and wholesome.
Very adorable.
And I am jealous.
Oh,
Skipping
me
ahead to
too,
page
me
5,
too.
we find the first chapter header page. The ones after this aren't
Oh,
particularly
no.
interesting for the
Carolyn,
purpose of
that's
this
not
video.
good.
They're just higher resolution versions of the chibis, except Gray's who's wrong. And the extra chapter at the end is the house crests from the city. But this one is kind of relevant because here we have close-ups of all
The cool
10 years
kids,
of
I
the
think that was
term
the
art.
thing.
Off the top of my
No
head,
spaces,
I don't
no
remember if a
capitals.
version
I
of
think
this
that's
was in
what
the
the
old art
goal
book.
was.
But either way, some of the term markers are fairly obscure in the sense that few, if any, characters known to be in that term have a visible marker on them anywhere, and I don't know if the first term marker shows up anywhere at all, because by the time we actually see the young Kavesi Trio's markers, they're in at least their second term because they've started training already. As I said, this gallery chapter is primarily pieces of key art from various places that we've seen already, but a lot of them are in different crops or aspect ratios so we can see the entire image, whereas only part of it was visible before. For instance, on pages 6 and 7 is the main piece of key art of the game, with the party members in a field looking at the Orion Titan and a kind of sword. I believe in an aspect
In the
ratio that's
background of
never
this
been
video
seen
is a
before,
different crop
and
of this
without
art.
the Xenoblade 3 logo on top of Araya that's there in a lot of other instances in this art being used. On page 9 is the image of Mio, lead character designer Masasuke Saito drew for the issue of Weekly Famitsu that had Xenoblade 3 as the spotlight game and was used on the cover. While it's not obscured at all on the cover of the magazine, this is probably the cleanest version of the image that's been seen
I
so
don't know
far.
what is happening.
On pages 10 and 11 is one of my favorite pieces of art from the entire series, which is the full version of the art used on the back of the box for the Xenoblade 3 Collector's Edition. This is cropped
That
a
looks
whole
really
lot
good.
tighter there, not showing off the entire Mikana sword, and not going to the left of Orion. So we don't get to see any of this.
Let's just do a nice reaction stream chat. No. Well, I'm kind of fine with you guys doing whatever you want. I mean, I like having you guys here, you know, and I know some people kind of complain about my reactions. So, I mean, it's kind of nice to, one, talk about the reactions more specifically, even if you're not that knowledgeable in Xenoblade, and also just to hang out with people that do like the reactions.
Really cool misty Arithia City, or an extremely cool and imposing looking Agnes Castle, as well as some fantastic work in the clouds. So I'm really, really glad we get to see this now. On pages 12 and 13 is the new piece of Saito art for the soundtrack, and while this is the same aspect ratio as it was used there, technically on the box of the soundtrack, the art is stylized like a photo that has a piece taken out of the upper left and lower right corner, so this is the full piece of art, even though most of what was missing was very vague detail work or just white space. Page 14 is the uncropped front cover, showing that it was cropped at least a little bit from every side. So we now can see the top of Noah's ponytail, the entirety of his left shoulder, a little bit of his pants, and just a little bit of the hem of Mio's hoodie that was missing. Page 15 is the Saito art for the Mio scale figure that's yet to come out as of recording.
Yeah, I like that
they
Mio
used
art.
this image as the teaser when they first revealed that Mio was getting a figure in the first place, so I'm pretty sure this isn't even the highest resolution this is available. Pages 16 and 17 are the Future Redeemed key art in its full glory, and page 18 has two things on it. On the bottom is the DLC key art in its clean form, which has been seen technically before.
Yeah.
But on
Which
the
is
top,
still a really cool
this
thing.
image of the party members at camp was used as a very blurred background for certain parts of the Xenoblade 3 official website, but as far as I know, this is the first time just the straight image has been available without having to, like, go into the HTML sources of that webpage and extract it that way. Moving into the next chapter, which is all about characters. It starts out with a bang on pages 20 and 21 with a big relationship chart about a huge amount of characters. A large amount of them are not on the affinity chart, so this isn't just completely reposting the character relationships from there, so I would be very interested in seeing this get translated eventually. We start, of course, with the main cast, and they get a lot of love here, all having 5 or 6 pages dedicated to them, as opposed to the 3 or 4 in the previous art book. That being said, one of those pages is taken up just with their
Why is,
main
like,
piece of
Noah's,
official
like,
art
left
and a
foot
bio with maybe
red?
one character design comment by Saito, and a lot of the other art is reprinted from the other book. With Noah's, page 24 does have some insights on how his outfit was put together that wasn't in the previous book, But the big image showing how the belt on his outfit go together was in the previous book, and the only difference here is that it does have commentary and annotations that I can't read, so we're waiting for a fan translation. The bottom row of page 25 seems to be interesting, showing that Noah is wearing a sweater underneath the Kavesi officer uniform, and connecting some of the aesthetics on that to the generic chemist soldier uniforms. But the middle row, showing off the turnaround of his Kavesi officer uniform, is also from the other book. It was just in the outfits section and not the Noah section. On the next page, though, I immediately run out of things to complain about, as one of my favorite things about looking at Saito's concept art is all of the expression sketches he makes for characters. The collector's edition art book contained a few for everyone who had them, but it had 6 each for all of the main characters.
Few of them.
Most of them in this book have 24. I have to say I'm a pretty big fan. Page 27 even includes a bonus 5 expression shots of young Noah,
Baby
as
Noah,
well as the concept art for the outfit he actually wears in the opening cutscene. Weirdly enough, though, there's no concept art for his young soldier uniform. Just this shorts and sweater outfit that he doesn't ever wear, so I wonder where that came from. Moving on to Mio. For some reason on the top of page 30, they show her taking her clothes off.
I know.
I partially don't know why they did this. Like, yeah, okay, there's a shot of her butt without the skirt on it. That makes sense. You'll probably want to model that just in case someone can get an upskirt by some camera trickery and for the scale figure.
Yeah, you gotta
I'm
model
not
that
sure
real
what
good.
taking her shirt off helps with there. Like, there's art of the inside of her jacket, and that makes sense because M dies and the clothes are left behind, so they do need to model all around, but I'm not sure what the purpose of her bra is.
It's for the
I
fans.
don't think they needed to model that in any scene, so whatever.
It's
Thank
for
you,
the
Saito.
fans, baby.
Looking at page 32, I wonder what's so special about Mio specifically, because she's the only character to have her expression sheets with the blue pen and slightly more sketchy style with less construction lines erased, as opposed to the cleaner and more detailed black pen style. Maybe she was either the first character to be made, or the last character to be made, or Saito just felt like doing that. Doesn't even match any Mia concept art from Xenoblade 2. On page 33, we get a diagram showing how Mio's braid works, as well as a better close-up on the face of the unused young Mio concept
Which I wish
design
we would have
that was in the previous
seen.
book. We're going to do something a little bit unorthodox here, and return to page 29 for the last bit of Mio stuff, because I had to save this for last. Here we have 3 iterations of a turnaround, just showing how her outfit looks from all angles, and with and without arms from the side. The top one appears to basically be used in the final game, and this is the version that appears in the collected works artwork. The bottom one is missing a little bit of detail and doesn't really have the coloring of her core crystal down yet. And the middle one only has one fully colored, while the others are still black and white. Also, she has an Aegis core crystal in that one.
Yeah.
What does this mean? To me, it does seem pretty clear, based on the differences in rendering and detail in the one piece that is colored and the lack of color in the other 3, that this was the first iteration of these, and the others came after it. So it's likely they weren't entirely sure what her core crystal looked like, and they pasted his Aegis core in there just as a placeholder.
Yeah.
That being said, there's no way they didn't write the story before they had Mio this close to her final character design, especially given the multiple pre-looking like this character designs we've seen Mio have. So they must have known she was Mia's kid, and that Rex also had kids with Pyra and Mithra, and that whole relationship was a thing going on.
Yeah.
So why did they pick the Aegis core specifically, not just like a very generic round core crystal? Like, they probably had a version of Senna with a core crystal by then. Why didn't they just use Senna's? That would go in better with the proportions that Xenoblade 3 had, because they are significantly different from 2, even with the same character design. What was the point of this? Why was it specifically the Aegis core? I couldn't find any concept art of Pyra or Mithra that used an Aegis core that looked exactly like that, so it might have even been originally drawn for this as well, which is extra bizarre. And yeah, ultimately, the answer is probably that it was a placeholder.
Yeah.
There is a distinct non-zero chance that, at least initially, it wasn't Rex who got Mia pregnant, but Mia who got Mithra pregnant. And that's where Mio comes from. Not only is
Yeah,
it...
which makes, like, no sense at all, but... but, I mean, I don't know, you could do weird science or even weird magic. I mean, magic doesn't really exist. but I mean, I don't know. You could make up some weird explanation of how a girl can get this other girl pregnant. I mean, that's what people theorize with Senna, who people think that Morag and Bridget have a daughter, which how would that even work? They think somehow something happened where they got Senna, and that's how she came into the world. I still think that they're connected, but I don't know how. So I'm guessing that's the same thing with Mio. Her original thing was that, again, like, her parents were gonna be directly Nia and, like, Mithra or Pyra, which would be really funny instead of being Nia and Rex, which makes more sense for having Rex be, you know, a polyamorous guy with, like, 3 wives. So that makes more sense. I mean, that's still weird, but it's funny more. Well, this is just weird and confusing, but also funny. I don't know. We took so long getting set up that my Switch just died. Rip.
It's distinctly within Nia's power set to do, even if she usually lacks the necessary biology, but it also fits within the lines of the relationship those 4 characters have, so this remains a possibility, albeit a far-fetched one. Moving on to Uni, on page 36, we see a few test renders of her actual in-game model. She's wearing several different outfits, including a previous version of her final outfit.
I do think in-game she is fully meant to be Rex and Nia's kid, just because, see, Mio has a lot of attributes of, obviously, Nia, but also a lot of Rex's, like optimism, you know, stuff like that. The golden eyes as well, so...
That has the under hoodie that she wears a lot more yellow as opposed to the lime green. I'm wondering if this all had to do with the lighting tests on her wings, because the initial reveal trailer of them was significantly different than it was in the final game, making them appear to change color between a purer white than she actually has and almost black.
Yeah,
so this might have been testing around with the various outfits to make sure the wing colors didn't clash with them, and also fixing the lighting related to that. 38 is fun for a few things. First off, we get some expressions that Uni doesn't really make in-game, and her
Let's go, Caroline!
Her wingful blushing is adorable, and just like Noah, we also have young Uni wearing a sweater and shorts, mimicking Shulk's original outfit really more than anything, as well as a close-up on her face, and concept art for the outfit she actually wears in the opening cutscene. Next up is Tyon.
The concept art has, like, it has her wings being like brown, like mixed with white, which is interesting. I don't know why Luxin didn't bring that up.
We see a close-up of his hand showing off his term marker, some concept art of Mondo's that was in the original art book, but I think does bear repeating because there's even a guide on technically how to fold your own, as well as some small comics featuring them. The next page has a better look at his original Agni military outfit, including a lot of different modular pieces and how that stuff goes together. And of course the obligatory more expressions, as well as the concept art for his glasses themselves on page 44. As seen from other art and explored in my other videos, Lanz's concept section is kind of always the most boring out of all the main characters, because his designs seem to have been finalized the first. As such, there's not really much else to say other than there is a test render of a version of his final outfit with, I believe, slightly different colors, as well as a close-up showing off how his turn marker works, and the obligatory more expressions, as well as a Kid Lanz design that's never used, and the Kid Lanz design that actually shows up in the opening and ending. I do think it is time to congratulate Senna, because she did not get the short end of the stick. On page 52, we can see her getting the classic Xenoblade 2 style, completely naked character with Barbie doll anatomy to show the entirety of their ether lines.
Yeah.
Page 53 shows off a bit more of the mechanics of her little side ponytail, I guess that's what that's supposed to be. And 54 and 55 both show some more very cute expressions of her, as well as a surprisingly smug close-up on the bottom. After the main characters are the heroes, and they only get a bio page and 1 page of art, so the primary draw to this section over the collected works art book is the annotations and commentary that we can't read yet, but a few characters do have a few new pieces of art.
I think this is the definitive
way to see all the stuff that's in the old book as well, because for the sake of space, they cram pieces of art together and overlapping each other, where in this case, there's a lot more white space and everything has room to breathe. A few characters did get some new stuff though. On page 57, there is a bit more for Ethel, showing off an old black color scheme for her outfit that would have fitted more of the Kavesi aesthetic and colors, but it wouldn't be as unique, so I understand why they scrapped it, as well as a test render showing off her term mark, another headshot, and a couple more expressions. Valdi on page 59 has a few more images
character
added
art.
to his
I like this stuff a
and
lot.
more close-ups on his outfit.
Especially because I am a drawer. I have shown off some of my drawings before on my YouTube channel, including some Xenoblade drawings, and I always like art. You know, I like how, like I like seeing this side of Xenoblade
And I don't
too.
get anything of themselves, but on the bottom of page 65, we can see concept art for the Youngsmith outfits, which is, of course, incredible, as it is in the final game. Juniper, unfortunately, does not get anything. I was hoping for a lot more Fluffy Cat content, but we can't find that here.
I wish we did.
Alexandria gets a little bit more concept art showing off how the horns she wears in her hair work. Monica gets a few more expressions, as well as basically a mix and match between the version of her art with and without the eye patch, and a couple outfit close-ups. Triton actually gets the version of his art without the helmet printed at all. I don't know why that isn't there in the collected works art book, especially because the same 3 concept sketches of his face in this book are there as well, but whatever. Miyabi gets pages 84 and 85, and she is honestly kind of sus.
What?
She has the usual full art and bio on 84, but on 85, she has a test render showing off her term marker, like almost every character with a visible term marker has, and this is the only piece of new content with her. One full body concept piece, and one close-up on her face with a very small annotation pointing to the ribbon in her hair. This is so much less than any other character in the game that we've seen so far. And she was designed by Saito, which is extra weird. There's no expressions for her either, so there has to be something about what her design looked like prior to this final iteration that they have to hold it back, be it a spoiler for a future game or that it was even just reused for someone else.
Yeah.
Maybe Miyabi came into existence because this was a side-grade potential design for Mio that they scrapped and decided to turn into its own character. And I get why there's no outfit concept art for her, purely because they can just reuse the exact same concepts from Mio, or just change the body shape slightly to fit Miyabi. But the lack of expressions and others...
Welcome to the stream, Ravi and Sorana. Can you watch Olive Venture's Wow Factor? I don't even know what that is, but no thank you. That's because we are reacting to Xenoblade videos from
details
Luxin.
that every other character has leaves me very confused about why Miyabi
I appreciate your comments.
On page 87...
Oh yeah, it is
it's a couple
Memorial
new
Day.
expressions
Happy
and-
Memorial Day, people. Do you celebrate? I guess I should. That's for like veterans, right? I guess I should. My dad was part of the Marines, so... But I mean, I just see it as a day off from school. You know, when I was in school, and then, you know, my brother sees it the same way because he got the day off.
And render showing off his term marker, and a couple details on his regular outfit, as well as an older outfit that looks very similar to the final one with a slight few differences, but it also has a cloak or a cape or something like that. He should have kept that. He deserves it. Sagiri is up next, and she gets way more pages than any other hero. She actually gets 4. Interestingly, the concept of her body herself doesn't really have any much different besides the annotations, and she surprisingly does not have a render showing off her term marker, even though it is one of the most obscure and hard to find in the actual game, though it is entirely visible. But the last 2 pages are instead reserved for concept art of her Pharaon, as well as the Pharaon of number 13. So 90 is just a turnaround of it, as well as color scheme
Cam
tests
is the
for
coolest.
number 13s,
What?
and 91.
Who is the Cam? Cam is the coolest character art. My parents won't let me on the TV. That sucks. Ooh.
Is actual more
0 out of
granular
10, that's
design
why I rate
concept art,
our
which
parents.
is always very cool coming from this
Just
game.
kidding.
And there's just a little taste
1 out
of
of
what can
10.
be seen when we get to concept art of the full-sized Pharaonis later on. Granted, I'm not going to talk about a lot of that because most of it was in the old book, but it is still pretty cool. Nia is right after that on page 92. And
Oh,
with this version
Kamarabi.
of her
Yeah.
official art,
Okay.
we can see
Kamarabi,
very
okay.
clearly that her floating swords
I did
are
not-
just straight up spectral versions
I
of
did not
Pirate
realize that
Aegis
that was a
swords
short
from
version of
Xenoblade 2,
Kamarabi.
and
I'm
not
done.
even with a slightly tweaked design like Rex has in Future Redeemed. Most of the heroes have some kind of effect placed behind their art in this book, and
Oh my god, a long comment. Okay. Sorry. And also, I had some sad news, not to say this, but my aunt's son had a boy and he had died Saturday in a car accident. So basically, my aunt's grandson, I should say, had died, and the funeral was this week. Well, first of all, why did you not say this earlier? Second of all, I am sorry for your loss. I don't know how close you were even to that person. That will be what, I guess. Oh God, I mean, like you described it, but it will also be your cousin in some way, right? I forgot. Family is weird. Like you have like second cousins, like first and a half. I forgot like the terms, but yeah. Well, it took 5 minutes to type that. Oh my God. But yeah, sorry for your loss, even if maybe you didn't know him that well. But
this
yeah.
book as well, just to emphasize things, make it look a little bit cooler. It kind of makes it look more like a gacha splash screen, which makes sense because heroes replace the gacha blades from Xenoblade 2. Nia gets an X that looks kind of like the X from the Xenoblade X logo for some reason. I don't know why she has this. It would make more sense for Gray because he actually uses the class of the main character of Xenoblade X. But the only thing I can really think of is they weren't intentionally going for that and it just happens to look like that. Or they gave something like this to Nia because the color of the spectral Aegis swords is very similar to the color of that X in X's logo. The big deal when it comes to the queens is that this book is the first time we see the concept art of their hero outfits as opposed to their queen outfits. So page 93 is very interesting for Nia enjoyers. And it additionally
really
shows
cool.
off concept sketches for both Noah and Mio in the Life Stage outfit for whatever reason. Page 94 is just her queen key art with and without mask. And 95 is concept art of that queen outfit we've seen before. Unfortunately though, if you look at the bottom, you can see that the
So
concept
you
art...
didn't know that guy? Mom's cousin? I think that would be either your... I forgot how it worked. Is it your... I think it's your first cousin once removed. Again, cousins, like, it's, like, weird how... I mean, you could just call him your cousin or something. But if you want to be specific, it's like... I think that one is, like, first cousin once removed. And if that cousin has a kid, then that will be your second cousin. But, you know, most people will just say cousin or something like that.
Not final versions of her face in the unmasked queen art are significantly smugger looking than the finished version, which is very sad to me as I am a smug fox girl enjoyer. In that outfit, Nia definitely counts as a smug fox girl, but they de-smugged her in the final game, which is a travesty really. Melia gets the next few pages.
I wish you could change the outfit for the queen or fighting versions. Yeah, that would be
really cool. That might be my favorite one in the game. It just calls back to the patterns on Telethia wings and Zanza stuff well enough to really look cool and be very thematically relevant. I point this out every time I see Hero Melia's art, and that is that it's less noticeable in-game that the inner tips of her wings are supposed to be multicolored and sort of form a rainbow going from blue to green to pink at the top.
I can tell it's
Page
multicolored
97
in-game,
has the
but it
concept
is
art for
definitely
this
more
outfit,
noticeable here.
and we can even see the very rare short hair Melia when showing off how the wings work in comparison to all that stuff, and honestly, I could never imagine Melia with hair that short.
So unsaved
Even her
Melia.
Xenoblade 1 hairstyle is way, way longer than this. Skipping to 99 with the queen outfit concept art that we've mostly seen before, I'm going to bring up something I don't think I mentioned in the previous video, and that is this art of Melia with a veil. There are several different iterations of it.
Okay, he had gone into a car accident because it was pouring down rain like bad, and he was driving in a truck and the truck had filled. That sucks.
At the bottom right,
sorry
we can see
again
the
for your
mask,
loss.
but it's pure white on the white parts. And then on the left, we can see the version that's actually used in game that has these patterns of parallel diagonal lines that make it look like a veil to some degree. Right above that, we can see her with a little bit of a veil on top of her head. And all the way at the top left, we can see that that veil actually extended far down below her waist.
Sorry for your loss again.
And with the piece to the right of that, we can see her with the veil in front of her mask. So to me, it seems like the idea for the fake queens to have masks and not see their real faces was thought of later on, and they designed most of Queen Melia's outfit, although you can see that the bird is actually just what looks to be flowers, so that part wasn't finalized either. And she was just supposed to wear a veil. Maybe they didn't decide to make her match Nia. Nia was originally supposed to have a mask or something like that. I just think it's kind of interesting. The veil didn't really fit Melia's character at all, so maybe that was supposed to be another early indication that this was not the real Lady Antiqua from the first game. We're going to lightning round the next few here. On 102 and 103, Shania gets a couple pieces of her concept sketches
Yeah,
in
why
one
are
new
you?
expression. Yorin doesn't
No, it's
get
fine
much
to
more than
say
that
that.
on 104 and 105, although he gets a render showing off his turn marker and the concept art for the outfit he wears in the opening and ending, like the other three. Nimue gets basically nothing on the next 2 pages. Then after that are 2 pages where Mwamba, Bolearis, Garvel, and Chris get half a page each. Garvel gets a new render showing off his turn marker, and based on machine translation, Saito's comment on Chris is very enlightening and hints at another thing I've been saying for over a year now.
About Shulk's other kid?
Aggie and Augie get basically nothing. Then we hit page 111. At the bottom, we can see just NPC outfit concept art, and this goes on for several pages that I'm going to skip. But at the top, we get concept art for young Gondor, as well as the cloaked child who speaks to Noah at the end of chapter 5. Young Noah's dub voice actor did confirm that that figure is a combination of Neo/M and young Noah, because it's Noah reliving his memories, and Neo is helping him through all that stuff. But this confirms that it's actually the child Gondor model they use in a couple shots, and not young Noah under the cloak, despite the fact that he's obviously still voiced by young Noah's VA, although that would be a reasonable thing to do. You have a young Noah in the game already, so it would make sense to reuse that voice actor for said character's child, who is also at a young age. Skipping over well over a dozen pages of reprinted NPC concept art, we arrive at the section about the main cast's Ouroboros forms, and I honestly don't really know what to say about these. There are new pieces of art for every single one of them,
Those look cool.
but I feel like there's not really anything to speculate about or comment on, besides these are different versions of the designs that
they
clearly
look cool.
predate the final ones, without having translations for Ouroboros character designer Choco's comments, just because I feel like he tends to give good long answers about why he did specific things, and there's not really much to glean out of this stuff without knowing, like, hey, did he have any requests from the development or story team about how to make things specifically? Were there problems making things that translate to 3D, or any of that kind of thing? It is in the other book, but I do think the piece of Tyon's Ouroboros at the top of page 146 is my favorite out of all of them.
That looks
The
really
cherry
cool.
blossom light constructs that are even pink like the real deal are
Yeah,
so
it is
incredibly
really cool. I've been saying
After
that.
Senna's Ouroboros finishes, we arrive at the Mobius section, and surprisingly enough, D is first before even Z. Not really much to say about him, but on page 157,
Maybe because of all the
we can see a
speculation that he's
previous
Mithras'
version of his
daughter, which I
Mobius
don't believe.
It looks pretty cool and has a slight Western design motif, so it's possible before Gray existed, Dirk was the actual cowboy character in this game, which is crazy to think about. And I know they changed it to preserve the homogeneous look of Mobius armor, which was a very intentional design decision that has important thematic layers to it, but honestly I think the concept armor looks cooler. He does at least get to keep the cape and the collar in his final design, but the different shades of red as opposed to having to splash in gold and silver, and the lack of the purple core crystal breaking up the color, just makes it look extremely cool. I would not mind if the gunslinger character in Xenoblade 4 reuses this exact outfit, even though hopefully it won't actually be Dirk. Not much to say about most of the Mobius concept
Oh my
art as
God,
well.
okay.
Like, yeah, the more important
Okay,
ones get
ends
more
up
expressions and
expressing.
several new pieces showing off various parts of their outfit or their armor or masks. N gets very funny expressions on 163, and interestingly enough, M's expressions on 167
I'm really
give her
sorry I had
regular
bad
Gears
lag for like
blade.
6 minutes.
So
I
while
couldn't
the
say
one
that
colored
somewhere.
piece is definitely M because it's her armor, the rest of them are just long hair Mio expressions, even though they're new ones that aren't taken from the previous Mio one. So that's kind of interesting. Zed gets a few expressions of his own on 169. Unfortunately, they are all faces he makes something similar to. I would have loved like blushing embarrassed Zed or tearing up crying Zed.
Yeah, I wanna
because
see a
almost
sad
every
Zed.
character gets those, but we can't have nice things. X and Y get the next 2 pages, and again, most of these Mobius designs there's not really much to say about without looking at the commentary, because I don't know the thought process behind that, so I can't really analyze or comment on that kind of stuff. Mobius, Shania, and Chris get page 173, and very interestingly, there's no concept art for Shania's helmet, so it seems like she was never going to wear it even earlier on in development, or Chris's full Mobius form, so it seems like he was never supposed to transform during development. We do, though, get a nice good look at the Console C helmet, which is fairly hard to see in-game because Chris never wears it, and the only time it shows up is the generic male Mobius in the theater during the Zed fight. On the next page, we get a weird grab bag of Mobius with G, O, P, and I. O and P get face reveals, which aren't present in the game or previous art book, which is very neat. And
why is that one?
I have to say, please make me feel things.
Okay, first of all, I can zoom in, right? First of all, why does this kind of, from far away, this one right here looks like Mr. Krabs? Second of all, yeah, I mean, look at her. She is making me feel things. He's making me feel things too, but in a nasty way. But her season, okay, I was gonna, never mind. Never mind. I was gonna say something, never mind.
And I'm not talking about having a full blood. We also get a close-up of the Mobius eye helmet, which is visible in-game by visiting Irma's hideout, but she herself never wears it, and it also, similar to Chris's, shows up in the amphitheater during the final Zed battle, as all the generic female Mobius Zed summons are wearing Irma's armor. The rest of the console and Mobius designs close out the chapter, so we can then move on to page 181 with the world design section. 182 and 183 have me kind of infuriated, because this is a high-resolution upload of the world map artwork, but it's all annotated so they can have a table of contents for this chapter showing what page each area's concept art is on. But then there's no clean version of this art, which I would love to have because it is another one of my favorite pieces from Xenoblade 3.
Yeah, I like it
While
too.
the size and aspect ratio of some images might be different, a lot of the
I gotta go happy birthday to all and all.
is
Did you say happy birthday before, Caroline?
And I covered
Don't
a
be
lot
back.
of these pictures.
No, I'm
and
kidding.
what they
It's fine. See you later,
specifically
Caroline.
for the development history of the game in my original video.
Tomorrow
on
I
the
will
CD
say, I'll say this at the end again. Tomorrow we'll be streaming at the same time. Yeah, the map concept art is really cool. Tomorrow we'll be playing Multiverses, so I'm excited for that, to see the game, because I never got to play the open beta thing, so look forward to that. 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, the same time as when this stream started.
The thing I think is most interesting is the top left image on page 184, which appears to be just kind of a general vibes piece of concept art for the Etia region, and specifically somewhere around Millick Meadows. As you can see, distinct looking rock formations with grass on them, and then in the upper right hand corner of it, literally a picture of one of the hills from Bionis Leg, plus one of the protrusions from the Gormati Titan. So even the landforms are fusions of landforms from previous games, even if something that looks exactly like this doesn't really show up in the final product. Next up are pictures of the first few Pharaonises that are seen in-game, and just take a look at the size of Colony Gamma on page 190.
Yeah.
I believe this was referred to as Wide Gamma in the other video. And remember that it looks significantly larger than it does in the final game. A couple pages after that, starting
I kind of would have loved to see the larger ones.
Concept art for the Cloud Keep that I believe wasn't in the original book, because they tried to keep the most spoilery locations under wraps besides a couple pages worth of origin stuff, so most of this is new. On 194, I kind of really like the first image on the top, which shows the room underneath the main floor where the first part of the battle against D&J takes place, because I really like the nature-y vibes there, with the light filtering through the bottom of the pool on the upper floor and the hanging ivy that isn't as pronounced in the final game. I understand why they didn't do it, because part of this environment gets destroyed during cutscenes, and that's probably a lot of unnecessary small moving parts to have to deal with when animating that stuff, but it brings a lot to mind of the lower level of Gormat Province, so I think it's kind of cool that in addition to just the generic Agnian aesthetic, there is a part of the Cloud Keep that does bring things that would be specific homey vibes for Nia herself. At the top of the next page, we can even see the concept art for the big door with the Dromark head on top of it. And interestingly, it took me a few seconds upon seeing this art to remember that this is what the door to the Cloud Keep looked like in the first place, because the lack of detail in the background of the one scale shot with Noah and Neo there, as well as the other piece of concept art with it face on facing the camera, make it look a lot like a banner hanging down with the Dromark head on top of the rod holding it up. And that makes it look a lot like a more Arcane aesthetic banner. So even if that wasn't really intentional, there's a bit of...
yeah, that one. We might see it. He goes back around. He went back around for one of the Mio art, so maybe we'll go back around. I don't know. Or maybe it wasn't that important. But anyway, what's the... Look, see, like, I don't know why Luxin doesn't mention, like, the Dromark head. It's probably Dromark, you know, and, like, the object form, which they were talking about, how, you know, some avatars become objects, like, Fiora became Lucky 7 or something. So, like, come on, like, this is Dromark. He just became a head. I did not mean to do that.
One of Nia's closest allied nations within the design of the
art. And he might go back around.
Maybe that Dromark head has a piece of origin metal in it that contains the soul of the actual Dromark. That's kind of the best thing I can think of.
Okay, finally he as soon as I paused it, he says something like that.
That Dromark head
in fact, let me rewind exactly. Jesus Christ.
Camera, make it look a lot like a banner hanging down with the Dromark head on top of the rod holding it up. And that makes it look a lot like a more Arcane aesthetic banner. So even if that wasn't really intentional, there's a bit of one of Nia's closest allied nations within the design of the Cloud Cube. And maybe that Dromark head has a piece of origin metal in it that contains the soul of the actual Dromark.
Yeah, as soon as I mention it, he brings
it up. That's the best thing I can think of for where he'd be. I can't imagine him going to any other character than Nia. The bottom of the page has the concept art for Nia's Stasis Pod. And as cool as this is, most of this is reprinted from the previous book. It was just in the Nia section alongside the Nia design concept art instead of in a location section. If you are a big fan of the environmental art from the other book, I would definitely recommend scrolling through the location section of this one because a lot of pieces were cropped heavily in that version, and we can see their full glory here. Page 195 is a good example of this, showing off concept art for the Fornis region in general. This first piece, a gorgeous view of Araya in Colony 4 from sort of the entrance to Fornis, is not present in the previous book at all, and neither is the Mechanis sword. Seems like the decision to make it look like it's stabbed into Araya from certain perspectives was decided later in development than just the general world design and what the Ionios regions would look like, which is interesting. But more importantly is the shot of the valley that is second on the page, as it is extremely zoomed in the other book, basically only showing Noah in the one rock formation, where here we could see more scale, the roof of the cave, a bit more of
That's why it took so long to make
and
the
some
third.
more rocks and plants. Just in general, the layout of this book is a bit different, instead going through locations in the order they're visited, including
do you mean the third game, or you mean the third video? Either way, both is true.
So instead of moving directly onto Pentelis environmental shots after Fornis, it goes through Colony 4, then Colony 30, then Colony Iota. Again, mostly...
Oh, look, there's where you wanted, Iota.
As well as said Pentelis stuff afterwards.
She told you he would go back around.
Pentelis stuff, so, you know, not really much to say here. That is certainly meant for Wildwood concept art. I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but after so many years and multiple apocalypses on page 207, we can in fact see that there are US street signs still visible in Maxville Wildwood. The funny thing is, the first colony they show off in the Pentelis section is Colony 5, one that's destroyed mostly off-screen and you're never required to visit, only featuring in side-story uni, before moving on to, like, actual important ones to the main story like Colony Tau and Lambda. I don't know why. I guess that is because 5 is closer to the entrance of Pentelis than those two are if you're coming from Fornis, but it's still kind of silly. The Chemist Castle region has a few new pieces that I'm interested in, but again, without annotations, not really much to say. Though on page 213, I'm very interested in the Fort Overvis concept art, because there is a blurb from a staff member talking about this specific page worth of art, and I'm extremely curious to see if they bring up the very obvious connection between Fort Overvis and the castle town outside Alchemoth in the opening and ending. Moving past
there's a massive connection
city
there.
Stuff, we arrive on page
skipping. Wait, what? Skipping? Oh my god. I guess I could rewind the stream.
Fort Overvis
skipping
and the castle
something
town outside Alchemoth in the opening and ending. Moving past Cadencia region.
Yes. And unfortunately skipping my favorite art piece in the entire series. So that is a really cool art piece.
We arrive on page 226, and mainly the piece of art.
Oh, you gotta go now, really, Blaze? Aw, well, see you later then. I hope to see you again in another stream. You know, I cover a lot of Xenoblade 2 when I stream. You know, and I've been continuing to grind for 100% in Xenoblade 1, and you know, I like trying to get all the outfits in Xenoblade 2. I still haven't done that for the DLC, so maybe you can join us for when we do that next time. I don't know when, but eventually at some point in the future. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you hopefully in another time. So yeah.
The bottom, which says Eichi no Koroni. So yes, they did in fact have concept art for specifically H's colony, which is extremely funny to me. This design serves double and honestly more important duty as being the generic Kavesi colony design throughout the entire game and even making some appearances in future redeemed.
See you
I'm assuming
later.
they just decided to label it as H's because that is the most important colony to the active story that uses this design even through the DLC. I'm not nearly as interested in the name though as I am the size. This is going to be reiterating something from the last video where I talked about a developer statement where they said the Pharaonises were initially supposed to be bigger and have more buildings on them, but this was scaled down due to technical and game design limitations. This appears to be concept art from before they actually started modeling the colonies and decided to make that reduction in size and stuff for the purposes of getting something on the base Switch to run at all in 2022, and probably for gameplay reasons, because having as many colonies as there are in the main game and also having them be larger towns probably would have gotten very tedious. So while I wish there were more large towns than just the city and Fort Overbus basically, I do think it's good that they decreased the size of the average colony to what it is now, as opposed to making everything the size of Overbus or something like that. I just also want to point out that I said basically this exact thing as a suggestion for why these concept Pharaonises like this and Wide Gamma are bigger than the final game way back in my first video for the CE art book, and what did you know, Ioneos moments proved me right yet again. This seems to be the game where Monolith Soft really mastered work smarter not harder, and you know what? Good for them. We're going to skip over a lot of stuff about Agnes Castle and other Cadencia things and go straight to page 243 because this is where Origin begins, and Origin only really got 2 pages in the previous book, so there's a lot of new art. And we can see that even Origin was hit with the stick of make it smaller for when we implement it into the actual game, as seen very quickly in the second main image that has a much larger scale and intimidating and imposing aura than anything in the final game, even though, yeah, you could see Noah for scale there in the bottom, and it doesn't really look that much bigger than the analogous room in the final game. So this is just a case of the developers actually making the game not being able to fully realize the vision of concept art. And yeah, obviously the lighting is much better and sets the tone a lot better because you can get that better in what appears to be a painting of some sort as opposed to a fully rendered video game that also has to have moving parts. That's cool and all, but I'm obviously most interested, besides the untranslated text box, in the top right of this page because it shows off the mask on Origin.
Oh, yeah.
It was known that Origin had a face since the game first came out, because it is shown off a few times in game, which, yes, does technically make Origin another robot girl designed by Tora, make it that what you will. But I'm very intrigued by the fact that there are actually complete versions of the gold mask on the face's right side and the silver mask on the face's left side, instead of just showing off the face as a whole and then the 2 sides of it. There are symmetrical gold and silver masks that one half of each is taken to form the mask actually on Origin.
So what does that mean?
I'm starting to think that the way Origin was designed between the universes wasn't actually physically each world made one half of the sphere, but both of them made an Origin, and those 2 interlink with each other to form the Origin we see within Ioneus.
Oh.
There are CGs showing the construction of it from both sides, but it's incomplete enough where we can't tell if they're only making half a sphere or if they're making the entire thing, so it's a very interesting thing to think about, and it's something I would love to see be explored in a future follow-up game.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
You to see Origin hanging in the air.
That would actually be really cool if they interlink themselves.
I have to also point out page 248, which are concept pieces for the room
really
Melia and the final end fight are in, and The one in the middle, that really just looks like a full Renaissance painting, which does track with the fact that Melia is the requisite character to get crucified in this new Xeno game. After Origin ends, there's just a few pages of generic Farana stuff and unused colony designs.
Whoa. He's probably going to skip this, but a lot of these look really cool. First of all, look at this one. This looks insane. This looks massive than like even like the bigger stuff we saw, which is crazy. This one looks like something from like Breath of the Wild or something. This also kind of reminds me of like Tears of the Kingdom, which is crazy looking. This one reminds me of Avatar, like the mountain, like oh my god, the Northern Air Temple or Southern Air Temple. That kind of looks. I don't know. I just picture Godzilla for some reason there. Yeah, and then this looks like a skull, But yeah, I mean, look at I find this one especially like really, really hecking impressive. Like, oh my god.
But I'm going to pick up again on page 254, as this is the concept art.
And this looks like Zelda again.
Or basically, the very Fort Overbus city plan town that exists in the original Xenoblade 1 world and the interlinked world after the end of 3. There is an untranslated annotation box here, and I'm wondering whether this one or the Overbus one will point out the similarities. My guess would be the one here for the prologue town is actually going to just be talking about the clock and its importance to the story of the game, the symbology of stops time, while the Fort Overbus one is the one that brings up the connection. Page 255 even highlights various fabric patterns on the awnings above stalls that we barely get to see in the cutscenes, only really seeing them in the ending when the camera zooms out and goes into the air above Noah. So this is really cool, and it's also especially nostalgic because, well, I'm assuming this town is a rebuilt Grandel because Alchemoth is right there. This aesthetic and even the buildings bring to mind Colony 9 a lot. Now, obviously, we can see the Xenoblade 1 Colony 9 in future games, so we know that's how the colony was represented in Ionios, but that might not be how the colony actually looked in the Xenoblade 1 world at the time.
Which is what I figured. This is what I always thought that Colony 9 was. The modern day Colony 9 was how it looked, in, like how it looks in the, oh my god. I'm messing up my words more than usual. Okay, the colony, or where we see Noah and like the crew at the very beginning and end of the game, I always thought that was Colony 9, and even I still thought that when Future Redeemed came out and we actually did see Colony 9, because I mean I don't know, this could have been just a larger part of Colony 9. That got expanded upon, and also it is like a digital world sort of.
Ionios formed because of how Origin works and how Ionios is technically a sort of reconstructed memory space, and obviously because parts from the Tornin Titan still show up there, so Colony 9 can really look like anything in the outside world. But yeah, it doesn't really matter which this is actually. Subtle Xenoblade 1 Easter eggs are probably one of my top favorite kinds of Easter eggs to other Xeno games within Xenoblade 3 as a whole.
I love it
On
too.
page 256, we see some really, really interesting and obviously very early pieces of concept art.
Yeah.
Now, the katakana annotating all of these just says image board 1, 2, and 3. So this is especially concept art and not even illustrators designing something the exact way they want the modelers to represent it when they're building the actual video game. This is an image board for throwing ideas together, seeing what sticks, and deciding on the ultimate vibe
I think that's
of the game's visual aesthetic. Now, obviously, image board 3 is basically Alchemoth as it appears in Xenoblade 1.
Yeah.
But it seems like they kind of wanted to have that as a baseline before going into things like how it would be turned into Keves Castle, and even how landmarks from the other games would be represented in the world of Ionios. You can especially tell that this is a very early version of the main party because, well, based on the bottom left one, image board 2, the party members are a blonder Uni with longer hair, Chilchuck with a flintlock rifle, Neo with a spear, as seen in the very, very early Neo concept art in the developer section, Rex with the Monado Rex, Lens seems to have been originally using a design that was later repurposed for Guernica Van Damme, and the OG Senna appears to basically be Emeralda from Xenogears, so changes were definitely made. The next page, though, is honestly an example of a fairly rare Luxin L, as all three of these images, image boards 4, 5, and 6, I interpret it as actual concept art for locations that appear in the final game and not just image boards. I primarily focused on 6 a lot in my CE art book video because that one I took to be concept art for the city and not just an image board thing that later morphed into some design aesthetics that were used for the city. I'd say image board 4, the one with the disembodied torso of Mor Ardain, is the one that was the most used in the final game. You could see Valak mountain crystals around it, so obviously things like that were shifted up. But in future games, you can see the torso of Mor Ardain, and then later find out that it's been destroyed by annihilation events if you look back at that point in the horizon in the main game. It was still recognizably Mor Ardain, and I was trying to say that the entire time that people didn't believe me until future games came out, but it is nice to see that something like this was still used, in spite of how much things did actually change throughout the course of development. I also do just love the art in Image Board 5. It's kind of interesting that this whole idea of a circular carving taken out of the land with small bits floating on top of it that was created by an annihilation event wasn't used more in the final game.
I wish it was.
I'm guessing part of this was due to technical limitations and it ended up not looking great with so many suspended small particles, but they did something similar to this on a larger scale in Xenoblade X, so it is kind of unfortunate they didn't have that even as a visual callback to X, if not something to further the story of 3 itself. After the image boards end, we just get a few pages of Levnesses, and then move on to Pharaonesses. The very first ones we get to see are the ones Ethel and Kamaravi use in their fight against the party, and then later each other and kind of Mobius a little bit. And I think 274 is the most interesting page out of all of these, because we can see several concepts for Ethels. One of them looks kind of like the Mechonis itself, one of them looks a lot more like Face Nemesis, and a lot of them look like older Xenomechs. So it's kind of curious that they went through all of these different things and decided on basically a smaller and more humanoid Kavesi Pharaonis instead of something different. I understand why they did it for thematic reasons, and Kavesi and Agni and stuff all being uniform is part of the important themes of the game, but I don't know, some more unique designs would have been cool because it was a very unique character and a very unique fight. You can see some of the same for Kamaravi's as well, although the color scheme was figured out way earlier because basically all of them are primarily red and white with some splashes of yellow. After that, there's stuff about the 3 main Pharaonesses, the castles in Gilgamesh, and a lot of it is cool, but one image I loved of Agnes Castle, with Nia standing in front of the ether furnace and poppies floating in the air doing a pose behind her that was in the old art book, is not present here. That's unfortunate, not because I expected there to actually be a lore drop annotation about that, but because I wanted it in higher resolution. But it's very easily noticeable in the other book, so you can easily find that if you'd like. And then on page 283, we get into Origins of Mech 4, which is very cool. I'm especially interested in what the annotations have to say here, because there are several design similarities between specifically this form of Origin and some very important and intriguing things from Xenoblade X. And I want to know if they even coyly hint at connections here, or at least acknowledge the design similarities.
I would love
as
that.
As well as wanting to know if this form of Origin is based on something specific from the other worlds, or just a generic cool-looking concept, because at least from the sensibilities of Bionis and Aurest, it does seem relatively alien, so I wonder if it does pull in things that I'm just not noticing. After this, we get several pages of creature designs, and while these are awesome, and I love Octos so very much, also there's a page entirely dedicated to Gulkin, so I'm a big fan. There's not really a lot to talk about here, especially without translations. So we can just move on to page 293, where I would like to just point out this concept art for Seraphic Seratinia, and how awesome this looks, and how I'm getting kind of tempted to jump into Monster Hunter with Wiles now that I'm looking at this art. So we're going to keep scrolling here, because the next 5 pages are dedicated to the Mobius scraps. And there's not really much to say about the designs of these in particular, because they're all just kind of the same design but in a different shape. But, God, it's actually really cool how they were able to take existing skeletons and base models and wireframes from models of varied things that already exist in the game, and then make not only a unified aesthetic between all of them, despite them mostly being organic creatures and not mechs and stuff like that, while also making them seem really alien and unsettling, despite the fact that they are reusing animations primarily from regular flesh and blood fantasy creatures that we've seen throughout the entire rest of the playthrough. Honestly, just props to the design team on this one. Not really much else to say there. Next up is a huge subsection about object design.
So
again,
wait, I want to rewind at first. Wait, I want to rewind because I feel like after
Tinia,
this.
and how awesome this looks, and how I'm getting
Those are the other things are the enemies that are like
I'm looking at this art. So we're
like
going
the
to
origin enemies,
here,
right?
because the next 5 pages are dedicated to the Mobius scrabs, and there's not really much to say about the designs.
For some reason, I heard him say Mobius like he's talking about the like weird enemies that are in Origin. For some reason, I thought he meant like the crowns or whatever.
The same design, but in a different shape. But God, it's actually really cool how they were able to take existing skeletons and base models and wireframes from models of varied things that already exist in the game, and then make not only a unified aesthetic between all of them, despite them mostly being organic creatures and not mechs or stuff like that, while also making them seem really alien and unsettling, despite the fact that they are reusing animations primarily from regular flesh and blood fantasy creatures that we've seen throughout the entire rest of the playthrough. Honestly, just props to the design team on this one. Not really much else to say there. Next up is a huge subsection about object design. Again, there's not really a whole lot to say about this stuff, especially without the annotations, because I feel like that would shed more light on things. I mean, page 301 has Mio about to serve you a couple pizzas Frieza style, so that's kind of neat. Page 302 is Yudi's gun spinning around and her having a great look on her face while that happens, but that was one of the preview images, so we've seen that and talked about that already. There's a lot of cool stuff about the actual form and function of the transforming weapons Lance and Senna have, so that's cool. And most hero weapons also get a lot more details and close-up shots than were in the previous art book, so that's always a good thing to see. We're going to skip through most of that because a lot of it just isn't really interesting without translations or without the design language knowledge to know why this stuff is cool. I would like to look at the Kavesi soldier stuff on page 312 though, especially the generic sword on the left and in the middle, because this is the type of Kavesi sword Noah has before he gets Lucky 7 and it gets transformed into the sheath/gauntlet thing. Despite all that though, on the last image we can see the crossguard kind of coming apart and there being a fidget spinner shaped piece of something that's a slightly different color than any of the rest of the sword there, so I have to wonder, is there a small piece of origin metal in all of those swords? And Noah having one of those from the start is why he was able to do so many great things even without Lucky 7? Food for thought, I guess. There's no extra hints for things like what Noah named his sword here or any official names for other weapons. Basically, each header will just be the name of the character that uses the weapon, or in the case of page 314, it just says city, and there's the concept for the generic city sword and shield stuff and their guns. Page 315 is N sword, and there are a few pieces that weren't in the other book, and that's interesting. Very weird is the one of Noah Ouroboros' sword of origin overlaid with N's sheath. I'm guessing they designed that first before designing N's sword of origin, which you could see with its proper color scheme and slightly different profile right below it. Not much else to say there other than you could very clearly tell that N's underlying Lucky 7 origin metal blade isn't a carbon copy of Noah's. It is different coloration and a different, slightly larger guard on it. Moving ahead a few pages, we find something
similar
really
but different.
Page 318 is the end of the humanoid character section and the start of the monster section, and it goes from Ethel to Kamaravi, then to Melia, which makes sense. But for some reason, I guess because they already had concept art of Mia's Catalyst Scimitar elsewhere from Xenoblade 2, and the Melia stuff here is specifically the form her staff takes when she inserts it to control Keves Castle, so it seems like for the regular staff they did just reuse art from Definitive Edition, but instead of there being a Nia section here whatsoever, it goes Melia, Bonnet. I don't know what else to say about that. It is really funny. After the monster weapons section ends, we get into the Offseer section where we can see concept art for Noah's flute, Mio's original flute, Miyabi's flute she later gave to Mio, and Chris's flute, so that's kind of neat and all. Then Mio's diary, her comb, her mirror that she only uses in exactly one scene, and then the actual pages from Mio's diary that show up at the end of each chapter. I believe they have been translated, and they're either just the English or Romanized versions of the Japanese lines she says in the voiceover over the save screen at the end of the chapter, so I don't think there's much that can be gleaned here. The Kavesi and Agnian alphabets are also here. The Agnian one is literally the Alrestian alphabet from Xenoblade 2, and both are just direct one-to-one translations to the 26 letters and 10 numerals of the English-Latin alphabet, so this was figured out already, so there's not really a lot to talk about here. There's also a full list of the colony symbols that are used, and interestingly, even with giving Keves H's colony, Colony 5, and Colony 0, there is one more Agnes symbol. I don't know, I never actually noticed this imbalance playing through the game, so that's kind of weird, I guess. After a couple more pages,
I'm sorry I'm yawning a lot, I don't know why.
other books, the term markers again, the chess set Mobius plays, and the random dubs from the opening cutscene, we then move on to purely objects design, so buildings and more mundane items like chairs and tables and umbrellas and all that stuff. It's very interesting to see just the amount of stuff they needed to think about when designing a game like this.
Yeah, it's
and
a lot,
it is a lot of
but
objectively,
impressive.
technically good art, but there aren't text boxes with actual commentary besides just labels that help the designers work on the art themselves, nothing being communicated directly to the reader, so I don't really have a lot to talk about here. And while there are a few new pieces, anything significant I covered in the original video, and the fact that the only commentary box in this entire section is
some of it we've
next
seen
to the
before.
column 0 side quest sibling
We might have seen
painting,
all of it before,
I'm guessing that one
technically,
is
in
just
game.
debunking the theory that this painting is any significant characters and isn't just
But I mean, it still looks cool. Anyway,
this entire section is
just rewind
here.
real quick.
And while there are a few new pieces, anything significant I covered in the original video, and the fact that the only commentary box in this entire section is next to the Colony 0 side quest siblings painting, I'm guessing that one is just debunking the theory that this painting is any significant characters and isn't just a piece of art in universe that represents the concept of siblings. After that, though, we hit 351, which is the expansion section, all about Future Redeemed.
That's cool.
Everything after this will be a new piece of art because nothing pertaining to the DLC showed up in the first art book. Something that doesn't really pertain to the art here that I guess is kind of worth pointing out is in the chibis on the page header for the expansion, we could see a lot clearer without just putting the official art of characters side by side that not only are Matthew and Niall noticeably a bit tanner than Nicole, Glimmer, Rex, and Shulk, but also that their skin color is different from each other. This honestly isn't as noticeable in-game as it is here. The only real thing you can tell there is Noah is noticeably paler even than other light-skinned characters. Like, compare N to Shulk, who is like the pastiest nerdy white boy still alive in Ionios by the time of Future Redeemed, and look at that. So I wonder if lighting and how it pertains to various skin colors, even if the shades are close together, would be something Monolith would want to focus on in terms of upgrading their engine for a future game, which will probably be on better hardware. Dawntrail's doing it, why can't Xenoblade 4? The next few pages are actually dedicated to the base game DLC and not Future Redeemed. So Ino and Masha both get the 2 pages every other hero gets, and the only concept art is shown of them in basically their final design, so not really a lot to talk about without translations. Then there's concept art for all the DLC outfits for the main cast. Not much to say here, because it is basically just concept art of them in those outfits. Although, bottom left of 357 lands in his Rhine outfit, doing the "you know I had to do it to him" pose, which is a reference to Rhine's definitive edition render, which has him doing that exact pose. So, I'm assuming it's just referencing the render and not the meme, but again, subtle, dumb Xenoblade 1 references are one of my favorite parts about 3 on a meta sense. Then, though, we basically launch into the entire art book up until now in miniature as we get a Future Redeemed relationship chart on 359. Then 360 begins the bios and concept art for the main 7 characters of the DLC. The first couple of pages for each character are not particularly interesting as they are just concept art of them in their exact final outfits and designs, and they only get 5 Saito expression sketches.
Oh, no.
But the rest of their section after that is sketchy concept art of their fighting style, and some of that changed in very interesting ways. The bottom of 362 shows that Matthew's gauntlets were originally supposed to do a lot more. They had an energy wave around him. It looked like he was able to do some kind of magnetic pole thing. He was able to cross his arms in front of his chest, and it shows some sort of sparkly effect behind him that might have been some sort of block. And they even show him shooting some kind of rope out of it and ensnaring someone by the wrist, as well as
Like
just
Spider-Man.
being physically stronger, presumably because of them, and picking up a huge boulder, the size of which lands using a power frame needs to still struggle to lift in the main game. The next page shows stuff that's a lot closer to his final design, but even then we have him jumping up against large monsters, punching things in the head, using something as a shield, and just straight up throwing stuff, as well as some tests for what his energy looks like, as well as maybe even his Ouroboros form, which appeared a lot more wispy and undefined in addition to cloaking his body instead of being a stand like it is in the final game. Next up we have A, very much the same for all of that, right down to the fighting style stuff that shows that A's Monado wasn't originally just a solid sword, but it was able to become a whip sword and shoot pieces of it out as little drones to do ranged attacks. That is awesome, and I hope they're saving that for a character in the next full-size game.
Yeah, we'll like that for another
because
game.
they figured blowing that animation idea on A, who's only playable in a 20-hour DLC campaign, would be a waste of something so cool. There's also some really, really cool-looking dynamic sketches of A doing, I guess, poses for Vision, all just different stancing up, holding the Monado, and having it glow. Those all look great, and I honestly don't remember what A's pose using Vision in the final game is, so it might not have even been one of those, which is a shame, because all of them look awesome. Kind of funnily, we get Niall next, and it's much the same for her. Her sketches about her fighting style seem to show that she was a bit more of a beam spammer than she is in the final game, which, okay, yeah, she leans into that more as Alpha, but her actual fighting style is primarily just martial arts. She just happens to have cool weapons that have more utility uses than Matthew's fists, so that's kind of neat. They also show her having rings on her fingers that are able to extend into some sort of sparkler thing, and it seems like they had some sort of magic ring aesthetic going before they decided on the rift-type fist instead. She also gets only a very small section on page 371 showing off her Alpha outfit, which is kind of surprising. I figured they would at least give her an extra page to show that off, but I don't know, maybe you'll see it again in the future.
In that outfit, she looks like she has a Persona mask.
His fighting style sketches show his arms being able to do a few things that they are able to do in the final game, but it's not as noticeable because of all the effects, like spinning around to do a spinning attack, having the fists grow to do big punches, having slight jetpack things, and being able to shoot a couple different kinds of projectiles, as well as just allow him to be more acrobatic in general, where in the final game, the thing that's really the most noticeable is him getting up from blowdown or topple by using those arms instead of his actual ones. Glimmer is slightly more interesting, as they show her using herself for a few things she doesn't in the final game, swinging it around a bit more, creating rifts in the ground, and it also seems like the instrument she used changed a little bit in its design as well, and was able to shoot like actual Kamehameha beams and some sort of like bird familiar looking thing, instead of just pure fire like she's able to do in the final game. Next up is Shulk, and he gets completely shafted for literally no reason.
Why?
I guess they realized that they'd be able to just primarily use Dunban animations for him, so they didn't need to conceptualize his fighting style, and he only gets one page besides the one with his bio and main art. He's treated like a hero despite being a main party member of the DLC, which is kind of funny. Rex, on the other hand, because they needed to design a new fighting style from scratch, actually gets 4 pages like everyone else, including showing off how he holds his swords, twirling them around, and even being able to combine them from the hilts instead of sideways to make a replica Numa sword. So, I don't know. That looks really cool, but I guess they figured it would be too close to a Shira's weapon to use, even though I kind of would have preferred that instead of a Numa sword. Like, these aren't Pirate and Mithra swords. While he can fight with them largely the same because of how Ionios works, and because they were probably made by Shulk, I think it would be kind of neat if the true Numa sword level of power was only achievable with the actual Pirate and Mithra swords, and him being given power by the actual Pirate and Mithra, and he can't be quite as strong as he can be with them alone, but I don't know. He's already the strongest in gameplay purposes. Maybe they should have just done that to nerf him, really. 385 does show the Numa sword, so it seems like they abandoned that idea or are only going to use it for a couple arts, and the Numa sword was always intended to be his most powerful thing. But I'm kind of more interested in the top picture, because the top right of that slide, it shows him holding the Mithra sword up, looking like he got struck by lightning, and then just shooting a beam out of the Pyrus sword, which, like, we did not need to give Future Redeemed Rex projectiles. I guess this is the one part where Monolith had restraint, because they're not very good at that most of the time, let's be real. After that is Alpha, where we can see his Saito designed Alvis form with the Zanza wings, and then his designed by Paulo, who also designed as the final boss. Then there's Riku. Riku just gets 1 page, which is just his bio, because this is the exact same art he has in the final game, even though he does not have his sonic screwdriver until he shows up in the base game, so they could have technically made a different piece of art with him not holding it or holding like a wrench or something, or even his ultimate hammer, and that would have been more accurate. I'm not even sure why they didn't just edit it to have a hammer or something like that. N is next. This is just his other official art but without the mask. He looks very upset and sad, but it's him, so that happens. Then we get
Relatable.
very small sections for Linka and Panacea, Gondor, Kyra, the one girl that Niall was close with who died, just the Liberators, which for some reason, yeah, they do use a generic NPC for the male outfit, but then for the female one, they just use Sharla. I don't know why they did that, but there you go. There's Sharla in Xenoblade 3.
Oh my god.
Then there's some stuff about kids. There's the old city, which unfortunately we don't really get to explore at all. I really can't wait. I know it's not actually modeled in the final version of Future Dean, because you just see the one area that the cutscene takes place in, which I think just uses geometry from the second city, and then the outside wall and a few flashbacks in Future Dean. But I would love like an out-of-bounds exploration of that, because that would just be cool.
Me too.
Then there's concept art for all the houses in the past city, and just a small piece of the woods that you start Future Deemed at. A bit of the Liberator's Levinuses, the combined Faranis that the one Mobius whose letter I forget uses. Then there's just more weapon stuff where it's, again, just concept art for the weapons as they appear in the characters' final designs. Most interesting
Because of how much I'm yawning, this is probably going to be the last video we react to.
on Matthew's hand. A gets only one small box, and not really a lot interesting there. Niall, the most interesting part about hers is just the lighting looks really good. Nicole and Glimmer, basically nothing to talk about. The proportions on Shulk's Monado Rex Plus on 398 look a little bit off. And there's even just regular Monado 1 for comparison that also looks wrong. So I feel like they might have accidentally squished these to fit it in the section in the art book. And not that the actual concept art looks off, because they just seem shorter and squatter than they do in any official appearance, including games and art from other games.
Then they just make the art
even
smaller.
Shulk's official art from Future Games, so don't know what's going on.
Instead of the squishy now.
Next up is Rex, and he gets 2/3 of the page, while Shulk only gets 1/3, but again, he technically gets 3 weapons, so that does actually make sense. The way the two swords fit together to make the fake Numa one is pretty interesting, and you can sort of see them opening and slotting together this way if you look at the cutscenes very closely. So not only did they practically think of how to design it in terms of how they would fit together outside of game, but they even animated it properly, which is really cool. For Panacea and Linka's stuff on 399, we can see another instance of a founder's mother just randomly having a cameo in the art book, because Panacea is Panacea, but Linka, it looks like they didn't have her design finished because she appears to be using Linka's body with Pandoria's head photoshopped onto it, and like I don't know why she's smaller than Panacea is there either.
I love.
There's just mini Pandoria holding Linka's weapon. This too is canon apparently. Then the rest of the page is just a few objects. The radio's there, I talked about that before. Then there's Ether Furnace, some other traveling gear, and just other object stuff. And at the bottom of 402, there's one concept piece of Matthew confronting Alpha and Niall with a very cool looking rift that is
so
exactly the rift from Future Connected. And, well, there's not really much else to say there. They probably just reused the concept design from Future Connected while they were conceptualizing how this stuff would work, and then designed the more unique one Alpha uses in Future Redeemed. I want this specific piece bigger and in a higher resolution because I think it looks really cool.
It does.
After that, though, we arrive at the extra section. And the extra section kicks off with 25 pages of camp dialogue and affinity scenes just being reprinted line by line. I mean, it's great for people who don't know that there is a text dump available on the internet, because this is some of the least replayable content without straight up starting a new file. Although I do, this is a tangent, wish that all the voice dialogue in like hero quests was replayable. Most hero quests have like 1 or 2 proper cutscenes, but all the dialogue is voiced, and you can't replay that at all without replaying the entire game. So I wish that was an option, but that has nothing to do with 25 pages of camp dialogue and affinity scenes. That's there. After that is the dev interview, which has only been very partially translated. There's a lot about this we don't know, but I'm not about to read through a machine translated thing and try to pick out any actual meaning from it, especially since machine translations have proven to be very wrong with this book, in this section of this book specifically. So I believe we've actually reached the end of the video, because everything that's been translated by a reputable source I've already covered. Next time, though, we are free of the art book, because next video will be next week and not whenever they make a full translation of the art book. So until then, this is Luxin signing off. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in a week.
Okay, pause. Okay. First of all, a really good video, and we are done with the art book. Well, P is until a full translation comes out, which kind of makes me wish I did the same thing. Not gonna lie, what we covered. But most of you guys wanted me to wait. I did a poll, and you guys wanted me to wait until everything was covered, which I kind of regret listening to you guys, because like it would have just been nice to cover it, some of it, especially when it came out, like some of the lore stuff. Let's see. Dormer could be the whole keep. That makes more sense for him to represent himself as a shield protecting his lady rather than a decorative head sculpture thing. I heard this elsewhere too. There's no reason to assume he only manifests in a small piece of origin. Yeah, considering Fiora is a sword. Lance always seems to be the first finalist. Well, you can improve upon perfection. My theory is Takahashi told Mio is Rex's kid with his wife, and he'd been so embroiled in writing the game he forgot so I wouldn't know which wife he was talking about. And by the time he clarified Rex's kid with Nia, already finished with that art. Is Luxin in Avatar of Numa. End screen we'll see pushes Rex out of the way, that is true. Delivery of the edits as he gets the page number wrong and over again slays me. About the Numa Crowd Core, I think originally Mio was going to be the Numa avatar just like Nael and Antos one, the way Mio was going to get Ultra Bustic Command and not just Noah. Okay, I get what it was saying. And then it's going to be like the avatar. Hey, Doctor Who. We're actually close to wrapping up the stream. We're just reading some of the comments that they left on this third video. This confirms that after saving the world twice, Silk suddenly discovered he was a fashion trendsetter now. Oh my god. I think about the party needing to change clothes, which they understand. Maybe the scene was originally more fan servicey. Young Mio showing the beginning from her point of view. I would have loved that. I'm always joining late lately. Yeah. The fighting style concepts are wild. Background from Melia's art. Chalk on the more they used in a couple styles. No, they. Wait, so. I hope other people check out the video. It's really nice to see how it's actually. So wait, what happened? But this confirms it's actually no. They used a young Noah for the boy in the cloak as a model and not Gondor. And yes, he was the boy in the cloak of the concept art. But in game, it's just young Noah. Okay, jeez. The spine of the art book has some art that can only be seen when bending the book, middle sword, and thus. Okay. I think we read a lot of it. Before we go, though, let me rewind something about his weapon, about Rex's weapon, like the combining thing, which is what, like right here?
Official appearance, including games and art.
It's like a little bit before that. To see I want to rewind exactly what
is slightly more
after
interesting,
this,
as they show her using her staff for a few things she doesn't in the final game, swinging it around a bit more, creating rifts in the ground, and it also seems like the instrument she used changed a little bit in its design as well, and was able to shoot like actual Kamehameha beams and some sort of like bird familiar looking thing, instead of just pure fire like she's able to do.
Which would have been
next up
maybe
is
a little
Shulk, and he gets completely
here.
kind of funny. Rex, on the other hand, because they needed to design a new fighting style from scratch, actually gets 4 pages like everyone else, including showing off how he holds his swords, twirling them around, and even being able to combine them from the hilts instead of sideways to make a replica Numa sword. So, I don't know. That looks really cool, but I guess they figured it would be too close to Ashira's weapon to use, even though I kind of would have preferred that instead of a Numa sword.
I kind of prefer the Numa sword.
Swords. While he can fight with them largely the same because of how Ionios works, and because they were probably made by Shulk, I think it would be kind of neat if the true Numa sword level of power was only achievable with the actual Pirate and Mithra swords, and him being given power by the actual Pirate and Mithra, and he can't be quite as strong as he can be with them alone, but I don't know. He's already the strongest in gameplay purposes.
Yeah, I mean, I get where Luxin is coming from, but I think it's cooler to have the fake, basically Numa sword and
translated by
combining
reputables.
it to the like that instead of being like a lightsaber thing, where it's like the two swords are like a lightsaber, like the double bladed lightsaber, But anyways, we have 2 more videos we need to watch, but we could technically watch them. I honestly don't know. We might cut it really close if we watch this video. But honestly, because I've been yawning like a lot, especially for the past like 30 minutes, I think we should call it there. Plus, I want to go eat something. I also need to make a YouTube short because I have a short for tomorrow. And then the next day, I actually have a 5-hour compilation video, which I'm really proud of because I edited some parts of the video down or fixed them up. And I also made the end screen and the outro. Okay, the end screen and the intro like pretty short and straightforward. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that video does in terms of performance, in terms of the viewer retention or whatever. But anyway, I'm excited for that video to come out. But anyway, I need to make another video as well. I also want to watch more Criminal Minds episodes because they ended off on a cliffhanger, and oh my god, they basically kidnapped 2 of the team members. So, Spencer and Garcia, if you know anything about Criminal Minds, they're like my favorite characters, and they got kidnapped at the end of season 13. Anyway, that's a whole side thing. I enjoyed watching all these Luxin videos. It was nice to catch up. We couldn't catch up on all of them, but we're pretty close. I'm glad I'm not 5 videos behind anymore. I'm only 2 videos behind. Isn't that good? So, yeah, I'm really happy about that. Let's do Luxin's true face reveal. Okay, so, yeah, that's gonna be it for me, guys. Yeah, some of these videos are weird. Like, I don't even watch them, and then they're recommended to me. Oof. But, let's back out. What's the time right now? Okay. It's about to be 10 o'clock. So, does this count as online? I don't think so. I think I need to play as online. Hold on, what is it going on here? Before we go, let's check all this. Because why not? I don't know. Probably need to play, probably need to play online for, technically YouTube was online, but it wanted me to play like a game, and I saved the data. Yeah, look. Yeah, so I need to play some Splatoon in a little bit, so I'll probably do that later today after I eat. Anyways, so yeah, tomorrow I will be back with another stream. We'll be playing Multiverses. I'm really looking forward to playing that game for the first time. I hope to see you all there. It's available on PlayStation and Xbox. I wish it was on Switch. That feels kind of dumb it's not on Switch, but I'm glad I could finally experience the game, because I have a PS5 and an Xbox. I'm going to be playing it specifically on my PS5. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'll see you all at 6 p.m. for the stream. And I hope you enjoyed this stream, If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Or follow if you're on Twitch or Facebook. I think that's really it. So, yeah, I need to go now so I can go eat, make the YouTube shorts, and all that stuff. So, let me put the end screen now. I keep forgetting I gotta put the end screen. I don't have to, but it feels nice to have the end screen while I'm talking down, while I'm, ending off the stream. Anyways, guys, I'll see you all tomorrow for the Multiverses stream. Yeah, bye.